Hey friends, it's Tomer, and in this video we're going to be checking out all the brand new Assassin's Creed cards, and we're going to be ranking all of them for Commander in an internet-friendly tier list. We have some of the usual categories. At the very top is Tomer Favorites. These are my personal favorite cards from the entire set, and the ones that I'm most likely to be adding to my own personal paper collection, which is the highest praise I can give for any of these cards. Great Commander means the best new commanders for the set. These are legendary creatures that I think are best suited in the command zone. So actually I'm going to change the title right now from Great Commander to Great Command Zone. I think that's going to be a little bit more accurate, less confusing. And then next we have Great in the 99. These are cards that I think are just better suited in the 99 than the command zone, but I think they're very, very good cards. Then we've got the Etrata category. For those who don't know, Etrata, it's an Assassin's Matter commander for Murders of Karlov Manor, and it's also like a theft commander that steals the top cards of your opponent's libraries and puts them face down, cloaks them. And it cares about assassins, dealing damage with your assassins, and then cloaking, and then flipping those cards up later. And when I was looking at the Assassin's Creed card pool for other new legendary creatures that can be commanders for the assassin archetype, I kept comparing it back to Etrata, and I think Etrata is just straight up better than most other assassin commanders, even in the Assassin's Creed set, which is all about assassins. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just biased to Etrata. I mean, spoiler alert, I am biased to Etrata. I have my own paper collection of Etrata, and I really, really like her. But when I was looking at a lot of the cards that care about assassins, they looked like they were caring about like face down, which Etrata really cares about, and making all your other creatures assassins, which Etrata really cares about. And there were some cards that just worked so much better with Etrata than any other legendary creature that cares about assassins. So I have an Etrata category, and if I think a card just works like the best in Etrata, better than any other legendary creature that can be an assassin commander or, multi-archetype cards, I'm going to put it in the Etrata category. But if it's more flexible or it's just like better in other assassin decks, then I'm going to put it in Great in 99. But I think Etrata is just so good for a lot of these cards. You'll see very soon. Could be wrong. Let me know in the comment section. And then finally, we have the Decent Filler option. These are cards that I think are just solid in the 99 or maybe even the command zone if you have certain restrictions, like a budget restriction, for example. I don't think it's the most optimal card, and you're probably going to be swapping these cards out at some point if you are looking to optimize your decks further in power-wise or anything, but I think they are decent filler options. Then I'm just going to be ignoring and not ranking the cards that I think just aren't good in Commander. They might have a different function in the set. There's no draft or anything, so I don't know what function they really have other than being like collector items, or maybe they're good in Modern, for example, because it is a Modern set technically. But yeah, I'm just going to be ignoring those instead of wasting time on them. All right, let's begin with the cards. Also, another quick disclaimer, I've never played any of the Assassin's Creed games. I do not speak Italian, so I'm going to be butchering a lot of these names. And for people who are fans of the franchise, you're going to yell at me in the comment section below. You can tell me how to pronounce them in the comment section below too, I guess, and I'll try to do it better in the future. But it is what it is. Hopefully I'll do a better job than Seth, at least. We begin with Abstergo Entertainment. Abstergo Entertainment is a legendary land. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana. You can pay 1 and tap it, add 1 mana of any color, so you can pay some mana to mana fix with it. And then 3 tap it, exile the land, return up to 1 target historic card from your graveyard to your hand, then exile all graveyards. This land is pretty sweet. First and foremost, this is a legendary land, so if you are in like a very heavy Legendary Matters themed deck, like for example Yoshimaru, this is an easy inclusion just to get your legendary count up higher. So that's immediately one cool use for it off the top of my head. Then the second use for it is basically instant speed graveyard hate, and it has a really good function in that. It's very comparable to Scavenger Grounds, which is a land I very much like. I put a very high value on mass exile removal at instant speed, because if your opponents are going to play like a game-winning combo or just a mass reanimation effect on their turn, you want to have answers at instant speed to deal with that. And just interacting with mass exile at instant speed is just really, really powerful. So I really like Scavenger Grounds. It is a little bit tough and high cost to activate. You essentially need to have 3 mana up, Scavenger Grounds untapped, and then 2 other mana sources untapped, ready to go for it, which is a lot. And then you also have to go down a land to stop your opponents, which also sucks. This one costs 1 more, which is a lot of mana to keep up at instant speed, which kind of sucks. But at the other hand, for that 1 additional mana, you're going to return a historic card from your graveyard to your hand. So you get something back as well when you're cracking the entertainment. And that also means it's more flexible too, because sometimes you don't need to be waiting around to use this to exile all graveyards. You could just be using this whenever you need to get back in a very important card from your graveyard to win the game, for example. It's a high cost, so it's not like super desirable, early to mid game. But late game, if you have way too much mana and you really need a card back from your hand, from your graveyard to your hand, this is a great way of doing so. Do I like it as like graveyard hate? Maybe not. I think it just costs a bit too much to hold up all that mana to stop my opponents from doing graveyard shenanigans. But I think as a legendary land, I think it's going to be very good. So if you're in like a 2-color deck that is like Legendary Matters, even a 3-color deck that isn't running too many other colorless sources of lands, I think this is a great way to just up your legendary count. So I think there's like one more. There's like an Abzan elf that cares about legendary permanents too. Yoshimaru, like I said before, there could be other ones too, and I think it's just going to be really good in those ones. All right, card number 2 is our first Assassins Matter card. It is Achilles Davenport. This is a 4-mana Dimir legendary creature human assassin. It has free running, which is a new mechanic to the set. You may cast a spell for its free running cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or commander. So essentially, free running is just Prowl. It's Prowl that is focused specifically on assassins or commanders, weirdly enough. So you can play Achilles for 4 mana, or if you dealt damage with an assassin or a commander this turn, then you can pay for 2 mana instead. So either it's a 2-drop or a 4-drop. It's also a 3/3 with Menace, and other assassins you control get +1/+1. So when cast for the free running cost, a 3/3 with Menace that gives all your assassins +1/+1 is a very, very good rate. It's not like super incredible or busted or anything, but it is a really nice anthem on assassin stick. And that's really cool. Is it good enough or exciting enough to be in the command zone? I would say no. I think we just have better assassin leaders, like again, Etrata, but there are going to be other ones too. And this is just better in the 99 of basically any Dimir assassin deck. So Achilles is going to go in the great in the 99 category. Like, it's just good in any assassin deck, but as you'll see later on, I think they all just deserve to be in the Etrata category. I'm biased, obviously. Let me know in the comment section below, but we'll keep going. Next, we have Adéwalé, Breaker of Chains. This is a 3-mana Dimir legendary creature, human assassin pirate. And when it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library, put an assassin, pirate, or vehicle card from among them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, you may return Adéwalé from your graveyard to your hand, and it's a 4/1. So it's a 3-drop. It will enter the battlefield and hopefully get a card into your hand, and a relevant one, an assassin, pirate, or vehicle. And it's also really good at crewing vehicles too, because it has 4 power, so that's going to help you crew even like the more expensive types of vehicles. And then when it's dying, like if you skull clamp it or whatever for value, sacrifice it for value, or just dies to a board wipe or whatever, you just hit with a vehicle and then it comes back to your hand, and then you get to recast it and you get to get that EDB trigger again. And that's just really good value. I think you really want to be in a vehicle deck for Adéwalé to be very good. It could be the leader of a vehicle deck, but I think it's going to be better in the 99 of them. And obviously it works well if you're mingling together assassins and pirates. It counts as assassins and pirates too, so it works in the 99 of those type of decks as well. But I think it's going to shine the best in any deck that really has vehicles, because then you get, not only can you really abuse the 4 power to crew because it doesn't have evasion, so it's not a really good attacker on its own. It can crew very well, and then it can always return itself whenever you're dealing damage to a vehicle. So it's obviously just better in a vehicle deck. I think Adéwalé is great in the 99. It fits multiple archetypes. It's like solid in assassins, solid in pirates, and very good in a vehicle deck. Next, we've got another Assassins Matter card. This is Adrestia. This is a 3-mana colorless legendary artifact vehicle. It has Island Walk, which is very cool. You don't really see that keyword printed that often anymore. It says this creature can't be blocked as long as defending player controls an island. And it's a crew 1 4/3. And it says whenever it attacks, if an assassin crewed it this turn, you draw a card, and then it becomes an assassin in addition to its other types until end of turn. So obviously, this card is very good in an assassin deck. It doesn't really do anything on the first turn unless you can give it haste somehow, but on the next turn, every following turn, it's essentially like a Phyrexian Arena. It's going to be drawing you a card every single turn, and it's going to be dealing some damage as an assassin very reliably if any of your opponents have an island on the battlefield, which should happen pretty often. So it has pseudo evasion. It has evasion if one of your opponents has an island on the battlefield, which should happen, you know, fairly consistently in most play groups. I mean, sometimes you just won't have an opponent who has an island and you'll be kind of sad and doesn't really do that much. But, you know, generally speaking, it's every single following turn, it's going to draw a card and it's going to smash for 4, and it's very easy to crew. And it counts as an assassin when it's dealing combat damage to it. It enables free running and all that good stuff. Okay, so Adrestia, greater than 99 of any assassin deck. Next we have Altaïr Ibn-La'Ahad. This is a 3-mana Mardu assassin commander. It's a legendary creature human assassin. It's a 33 with first strike, and when it attacks, exile up to 1 target assassin creature card from your graveyard with a memory counter on it. Then for each creature card you own in exile with a memory counter on it, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Exile those tokens at end of combat. So this card I like a lot. It's all about attacking, and it's all about basically doing a really cool form of recursion where you're exiling. You want to have assassin creatures in your graveyard to exile with Altaïr, and then when you're attacking, you get to make copies of those, benefiting from like enter the battlefield triggers or combat triggers or whatever, and just dealing a bunch more damage as well. Each subsequent attack you do with Altaïr. I really like this mechanic. It's really cool. I like aggressive commanders, personally speaking. I started playing Commander back in 2011, and I was like a hardcore control-y, dirtly player. But now in 2024, I'm basically just a hardcore combat person. I want attack triggers. I want to have smash face as much as possible. So this appeals to me a lot. The effect is really unique, yet very, very powerful. It's on a 3-drop. It gives you access to 3 different colors. Notably, it doesn't give you access to blue. And I think assassins are primary black and then secondary blue. I could be wrong though. But yeah, regardless, it's access to 3 colors, the most important color being black. And I like it. You need to give it evasion or something to make sure it can attack more easily. But its effect is really, really powerful. And I also really like it in combination with extra combat effects, which red does very, very well. So any ways of getting additional combats, it means you're going to have additional attacks with Altaïr, additional attack triggers. So you're going to be exiling more and more assassins if you have more of them in the graveyard, and just more and more damage. So it keeps compounding itself and just, you know, killing your opponents very, very quickly. I like this one a lot. Big thumbs up. Okay, Altaïr, definitely great in the command zone. A very, very exciting assassin leader with a very unique twist to it. Is it my favorite? Is it one of my favorites? I think it is. I really like it. It's a very clean design that I'm excited to play around. Yeah, I'll put it in the favorite category. I don't think it's actually going to go into my personal paper list, so maybe it doesn't deserve to be right up there. I'll put it great in the command zone for now. I don't think I'm going to actually build around it in paper, but I'm definitely going to play on it maybe like in Commander Clash or something, or at least on a stream at the very least. I really like this one a lot. Next we have Apple of Eden, Isu Relic. This is a 4-mana colorless, a legendary artifact. You can tap it, pay for life, sacrifice it. Look at the target opponent's hand and exile those cards face down. You may play those cards this turn, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. Until end of turn, whenever you play a land or cast a spell this way, its owner draws a card. At the beginning of the next end step, return the exiled cards to their owner's hand. Activate only as a sorcery. So this card can be a powerful theft effect. You have to pay 4 mana, but then activating it just costs 4 life, at least doesn't cost mana. And then you can play your opponent's entire hand, which could be very powerful. You will be obviously bottlenecked in terms of how much mana you have to actually cast all the spells in your opponent's hand. And also your opponents don't lose those cards, really. They don't go down in terms of cards, at least. They lose the cards that you cast, but they replace it. They get to draw a card each time you play a land or cast a spell with this effect. So they're not going down cards, but you are stealing their best cards, and then they're drawing random cards to replace them. The card is solid, I think, in a theft deck, or a card that cares about exile mattering. So again, if you're in a Prosper deck, for example, this could be a fun card to play with, because every single time you cast a spell from your opponent's hand with this effect, you're casting it from exile, so then Prosper will give you a treasure, and that will help you cast the other spells in your opponent's hand. So that's kind of cool. So exile matters, it's good. And then any commander that like rewards you for casting your opponent's spells. So like the new Gaunty, for example, it's going to be super fun. It is a little bit awkward that like it costs 4 mana, and then keeping it around on the table, like you generally want to like play it and then immediately crack it, so your opponents don't have a chance to, like cast the best spells from their hands, in anticipation for the apple stealing it on a subsequent turn or whatever. But then if you paid 4 mana, then that's 4 less mana you have to actually cast the spells from your opponent's hand for that turn. So it's a little bit awkward, not too awkward though. It's going to be fun theft and maybe exile matters decks. Okay, Apple of Eden. It's great in 99. I think it's a solid playmaker. Okay, we've got Arbaaz Mir. This is a 2-mana Boros legendary creature human assassin. It's a 2/2, and whenever it or another non-token historic permanent enters the battlefield under your control, Arbaaz deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. So there's also a strong historic matters theme going on in the set. I think it is tied primarily to white and red, the Boros colors. So you see that with this one, Arbaaz, and it's nice. It deals a decent amount of damage. It doesn't trigger on tokens. So if you make a whole bunch of treasure tokens, for example, you're not going to just kill your opponents outright. But if you're playing like a Cheerios style deck where you're just trying to either play just a bunch of 0-drop, artifacts or whatever, or, lower discount the cost of your artifacts to 0, then you could very easily like burn through your deck and burn through your opponent's life totals at the same time. Arbaaz works very well as a life gain trigger as well. So if anything cares about life gain, this is a really cool way of doing it. You can increase the damage very easily too. Cards like Torbrand, for example, will deal 3 damage each time to each opponent instead of just 1. So there's definitely a lot of build around. It also can combo off very easily too. And then that's a combo piece for 2 mana in your command zone, potentially. So I think Arbaaz has some potential. I think this is mostly a combo commander. I think this is not just like something you just run out for a little bit of a ping effect. I think this is something you want to combo with. So that's something I think makes it better suited in the command zone than the 99, but it's pretty flexible. The ping effect is really nice. I like that it also gains life, and there's definitely ways of synergizing around it to make it much more powerful. So Arbaaz, I'm going to put you great in the command zone, I think. I think it's like more of a combo card. And also at this point, now that I'm looking at the cards, I think Apple of Eden might be a little bit too generous, saying great in 99. I'm going to put in a decent filler option. I feel like most decks can do better, but Theft and Exile Matters decks might still care to run it, Okay, the first card we're skipping over is Assassin's Den. I just think this card is very overcosted for what it's doing. If you had any way of like lowering the activation cost to just 1 blue instead of 4 mana, maybe it could be good, but honestly, you could just run better cards with better activated abilities at that point. We're going to move on to another card that I think a lot of people will be like, what? Tomer, you think Assassin Initiate is good? And yes, friends, I do think it's good. It's a 1 mana, 1/1 human assassin. You could pay 1 mana to give it either flying, death touch, or lifelink until end of turn. And the reason why I like it is because of Etrata. It's a 1-drop that could potentially have flying, lifelink, or death touch if you put more mana into it. But the beautiful thing about this is that you don't actually have to activate the ability. Just a threat of activating it and giving something death touch will make blocking very inconvenient for your opponents. So the thing with Etrata, it plays kind of like an Edric style deck where you really want to be curving out with 1 and 2 drop assassins. So you want to ideally go like 1 drop, turn 1, do a 1-drop assassin. Turn 2, 2-drop assassin. Then turn 3, play your Etrata, swing with your 1-drop and 2-drop assassins, and trigger Etrata 2 times by turn 3. And then you already have a very awesome board state. So, having a critical mass of 1-drop assassins and 2-drop assassins is key to making that style of tempo play work. And Assassin's Initiate is going to do that job very admirably. It doesn't look very good. It's just a 1 mana 1/1 by itself, and then it requires additional mana to do anything beyond that. But like I said, if you swing out a 1/1 at any opponent who has a creature they'd rather not trade with, and you have 1 mana open, they're not going to just block it, because then you're just going to activate the death touch and they lose the creature. And sometimes if they do have 1/1 tokens or whatever, you can just invest 1 mana that turn to give the initiate flying, and then you're good, you're golden. So I think this card is actually very solid in Etrata, like one of the best assassins, weirdly enough. So yeah, Assassin Initiate is going to be the first one in the Etrata category. Hopefully people don't get sick of me talking about Etrata. I love her, and I hope that you will too. Another card we're skipping is Auditore Ambush. Auditore Ambush? I don't know how to say that word. This is one of those starter precon cards, starter deck cards, exclusives that are just not very powerful in Commander. They're meant for beginners, and it's meant to be a little bit lower power. It just bounces something and then grabs the face card of the deck. Ezio, I don't know how to say the name, from the deck. It's not good. But we're going to move on to another new commander that's very good, I think. It's Aveline de Grandpré. I'm living in Paris, and I'm butchering French. Whoops, daisy. Anyway, let's move on to the card, shall we? This is a 4-mana green legendary creature human assassin. However, it has a color identity of Golgari because it has a disguise cost of black and a green. So if it's in the command zone, it gives you access to both green and black, and you can only put it in the 99 of decks that are both color identity green, black, plus, whatever. So you can either pay for 4 mana, and then it's a 3/3 Death Toucher, or you can disguise it, you can cloak it for 3 mana from your hands as a 2/2 with Ward 2, and then you can turn it up for black and a green afterwards. So yeah, 3/3 Death Touch Human Assassin. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, you put that many +1/+1 counters on that creature. Now this card is really exciting, not because I think its triggered ability is super powerful or anything. It's really mana efficient. But what is really exciting to me is it gives you a commander for the Death Touch archetype in Golgari colors, which are the 2 primary colors for the Death Touch archetype. There's not that many cards that care about Death Touching matters yet, but they're slowly adding them throughout the years, and they're all in Golgari, I believe. But we just haven't really had many commanders to lead a Golgari Death Touch deck. The most popular Death Touch commander is mono green. It's Flynn or Finn or something like that. I don't know. It's popping up on the screen right now, and it turns all your Death Touch into Infect or Poison or whatever, and that's very powerful. But you don't have access to black, which is kind of a downer. I don't think there are any other Golgari commanders that care specifically about Death Touch. I could be wrong, but I do know that this one is a very good one. So this one, you can run a bunch of Death Touch creatures, or you could give all your creatures Death Touch, and then you got a bunch of +1/+1 counters as you're dealing combat damage, and that's super cool. It pumps up your Death Touch creatures. Give them Trample, and then you just have to assign 1 damage to the blocking creature. If it has Death Touch and Trample, this is kind of a little cool quirk of Magic, is Death Touch and Trample on a creature means that you only have to deal 1 damage, a lethal amount of damage, which is just 1, to a blocking creature, and then you can assign the rest of the damage onto the opponent's face. So let's say you have like a 5/5 Death Touch Trampler, and your opponent blocks with like a 4/4. You can actually just deal 1 damage to the 4/4, and then 4 to the opponent's face, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I like the card. I think it's neat. Okay, we're going to put this right in the command zone. Next, we have Aya of Alexandria. This is a 4-mana Boros legendary creature human assassin. It's a 4/3 with menace, a lifelink, and whenever a historic creature control deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with menace. I think Aya is okay. It is interesting that it could be a pretty cool and unique assassin commander in Boros colors. But when I was looking at the number of assassins in Boros colors, I was kind of disappointed to see how many we were working for. You could also just go like Historic Matters, and I think that's probably the best way of building Aya because it's a Historic Matters trigger. But then you get a bunch of 1/1 assassins, and the payoff isn't like super good or anything on a 4-drop. Yeah, I just don't like it that much. I think it's like okay. If you put this in like a Historic Matters deck, just being able to passively make a bunch of 1/1 black assassin creatures is kind of nice. And then you can run a couple like Assassin Matters cards in the 99 to kind of bolster the synergy with Aya and get more value out of your tokens. And the fact that she is also an assassin, that's all right. It's just not super like powerful or super exciting to me personally. I think Aya is decent filler. Like you could put this in a Historic Matters deck. You could put in the command zone of a Historic Matters deck that runs like some assassin synergies as well. It's kind of cool, but like not super powerful or super exciting to me personally. Now this card is super interesting to me. This is Ballad of the Black Flag. This is a 3-mana blue enchantment saga, and it has 4 chapters. The first 3 chapters say mill 3 cards. You may put a historic card from among them into your hand. And then the 4th chapter is historic spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. So in a deck that is very heavy on historic cards, like I'm talking really, really heavy, most often that means it's going to be an artifact deck because you can run not only just like a critical mass of artifacts in as non-land permanents, but there's also a lot of artifact lanes too that you can bolster as well. So you can really get your artifact count like at least to 50 out of 100 or whatever, making the chances of hitting with the first 3 chapters very, very high. I guess you could do the same thing with legendaries. There's a lot of legendary lands too, and you could also get to like 50-ish legendaries in your deck or like some sort of combination of all of them. But then yeah, so if you have a critical mass of historic cards in your deck, I'm talking like 50-ish historic cards in your deck, so that the odds of hitting every single time, getting a card value out of it for every single chapter, the first 3 chapters, is very high, then this card is really good because then those 3 chapters are just like card advantage and milling. So it's like filling your graveyard for graveyard synergy stuff. And then the last chapter is you just get to cast a bunch of spells for super cheap. Like that's really nice. That's a lot of value for a 3-drop. It's slow. It takes 4 turns. But the first turn you get to mill a little bit and get a card back hopefully. So you get immediate value and then you get incremental value beyond that. It's good. This is a lot of value for 3 mana. I was like thinking about putting this in my Tetsun deck because I think I am actually up to like 52 artifacts in my Tetsun deck, and I actually really do like milling myself because it fuels craft costs and stuff like that in my Tetsun deck. It's just not an artifact itself, which kind of sucks. That's the only bummer about it, but otherwise it's such a slam dunk. So I think if you're like in a Historic Matters deck, anything that is historic, this card is really worth considering. So Ballad of the Black Flag, I'm going to put it very high on grade in the 99. I think this is one of the greatest cards we've looked at in the 99 because it's not just powerful, but it could show up in a lot of different decks. Next, we have Basin Ibn Ishaq. This is a 2-mana Dimir legendary creature human assassin. It's a 2/2, and it says whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card, and then it can't be blocked this turn, and this triggers only once each turn. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is another Historic Matters card. And I think it's a really strong one. Like this is a 2-drop that can be potentially drawing you a card every single turn if you are in a historic deck. So it's basically a 2-mana Phyrexian Arena that also gets in there for combat damage and grows. So the first time it's hitting, it's 2, then it gets +1/+1 counter on it, so then it's going to be 3 the next time, and so on and so forth. And then that's also a really great way of like triggering combat triggers, like if you put a sword on it or something like that. So you get even more value out of the fact that it's going to be attacking as an unblocked creature. Yeah, this card is dope. I think it could be really effective as a commander. This is just like a guaranteed 2-drop, and then if you're a historic deck built around Basim, imagine just going like turn 2 Basim, turn 3 play a historic spell, smash you for 2, combat triggers and all that stuff, and then like turn 3 you keep going. You can go even like Voltron with him, even though I don't think you really need to, but you could go Voltron with him, then like load up on like swords and other historic cards that will buff up Basim and get like good combat triggers off him every single time you're doing it. Like that seems great to me. As an assassin, if you're in an assassin deck, I think he could be pretty decent. It just depends how many historic spells you're running in your assassin deck. He's not like a good in the command zone of an assassin deck, but in the 99, I think he could be definitely playable. But yeah, I think he's really good. In any historic deck, I think he's a worthy choice, and he's very interesting in the command zone. I think he's best in the command zone just because having a guaranteed turn 2 Basim is so powerful to just like start getting that value immediately. Yeah, I like him a lot. I like him a whole bunch. All right, Basim, great in the command zone. I don't know. I think he's better than Altaïr overall. But I think Altaïr is just like his abilities are more unique to me. That I like him more. I'm more excited to build around him. But Basim, I think, is like a really, really good commander. Good commander, good in the 99 of basically any historic deck, and then just also good in assassin decks that have enough historic matters to trigger him every single turn. Okay, Battlefield Improvisation is another card that I'm just going to be skipping over. It's a little bit of a combat trick, a little bit of a buff effect, and also is a cost reduction, instant speed reduction on attaching an equipment. The only downside is the creature must be attacking to activate its effect, so you can't be like at instant speed, somebody tries to blow up one of your creatures with a Source of Plowshares, and then you activate Battlefield Improvisation on their turn, for example, to move like a protection from white sword onto that creature and nullify it. I feel like we have better effects than Battlefield Improvisation, so I just don't like it that much. We're going to move on to another legendary creature though. That is Bayek of Siwa. This is a 5-mana Boros legendary creature human assassin. It's a 3/4, but it also has disguise of 3, so 1 red and a white. So you can disguise it for 3 mana and then flip it up for another 3 mana, or you can just pay 5 mana and just drop it on the front side. So it's a 3/4 double strike. As long as it's your turn, other historic creatures you control have double strike. Giving all your creatures that are historic double strike is really powerful. But I kind of feel like this card is very much overcosted for what it's doing. There's a lot of cards that give like a specific archetype double strike. For example, I think in my Akiri deck, I have a dwarf that's a 2-mana dwarf that's Boros that just says if you're attacking your equipped and I think aura creatures as well, all have double strike. And that's a 2 mana. So that's very aggressively costed. And then you compare it to this, where the body is bigger. It's a 3/4 of double strike itself, which is quite nice. And it has disguise, so you can be a little bit sneaky about it. Like you can swing out with a bunch of creatures, and then your opponents, you know, will block or not block based on that information that you have. And then you're like, surprise, I have Bayek, and now all of my stuff have double strike. I really like that effect, and I think that's the biggest and strongest quality of it. But I still think at the end of the day, this is just a little bit overcosted. Like if Bayek was just like a 3-drop that can also disguise, I would like it a lot more. I just feel like the mana cost is quite high for this effect. But it's still decent filler, I think, in the 99. If you put this in the command zone, then the whole point of the disguise doesn't work. So yeah. All right, Bayek Siwa. I think this is fine in as a filler of the 99 of a Historic Matters deck. Okay, we have Become Anonymous. This is a 4-mana blue instant that I very much like. It says exile target non-token creature you own, and the top 2 cards of your library in a face-down pile. Shuffle that pile, then cloak those cards. They enter the battlefield tapped. So, this is an instant speed trick that I very much like. It's also card advantage that I also very much like. For 4 mana, you just like exile something, then you exile top 2 cards, you shuffle them around, they're all face down, and you have no idea which card is which anymore. Well, your opponents have no idea which card is which anymore. And obviously, because the creature that you exile with this is a creature, you can always flip it up at any given time. The other 2 cards, if they are creatures, you can flip them up. Otherwise, like if they're not a creature, you can't flip them up unless you can blink them or do some sort of other effect to them to flip them up. Nonetheless, I find this card very, very powerful in a single deck, and I think it's a really cool combat trick / card advantage engine in a single deck. It's a Trada. This is a Trada card because not only do you really need to protect the Trada, Trada is also more of a draw-go style deck, at least my version of it is, because you want to keep up 4 mana to activate a Trada's ability. So you're always going to be passing a turn, keeping up a Trada's ability to flip up your cloaked cards. Trada is also very vulnerable, like a lot of the deck revolves in and around Trada, so you want to have multiple ways of protecting her, and this protects her from single target removal. And then also the things that you cloak from the top of your library, even if it's not a creature, Trada can flip it up for you with her ability. So this is an Trada card. It's really, really cool. I like the flavor of it. It's neat, and it goes straight into Trada. Play Trada. Okay, so this isn't a Trada card. I guess it's also a Kadena card. If you're running a Kadena, put this maybe in the deck. Maybe, I don't know. Next we have Bleeding Effect. This is a 4 mana Orzhov enchantment, and it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control gain flying until end of turn. If a creature card in your graveyard has flying, the same is true of First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. So this is basically like an Odric effect where you want to have keyword soup. This time, not on the battlefield, you want to have a keyword soup creature in your graveyard, and then Bleeding Effect is going to give the keyword soup to all of your creatures on the battlefield at the beginning of combat every single turn. So obviously, you want to be loading up with creatures with very powerful keyword soupy effects, like Zetalpa, for example. Put it in the graveyard, and then, put down Bleeding Effect, and suddenly your entire team has all the benefits of all those keywords. It's a really cool mechanic. It's something you don't see that many times in Magic. The keyword soup matters, but it's a really cool effect and can be very powerful in the right circumstance. And I really like it. It's a really neat effect. Like, obviously, Double Strike's the best one, but like flying Double Strike and then like Lifelink or something, and you're gaming. You're having a great time. So yeah, I like it a lot. All right, Bleeding Effect. Great in the 99 of a very specific keyword soup deck. All right, then we got Brotherhood Ambushers. I'm going to skip over it. I think it's just overcosted. Even if you free run it for 4 mana, a 6/3 assassin for 4 mana is just not good in Commander. Brotherhood Headquarters is solid. It's only good in an assassin deck, so that's going to be very quick analysis over here. It's a land, it taps for colors, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, but you have to spend this mana only to cast an assassin spell or a spell that has free running, or to activate an ability of an assassin sort. All right, so Brotherhood Headquarters, great in 99 of assassin decks and assassin decks only. Next, we have a new evasion equipment. This is Brotherhood Regalia. This is a 2 mana colorless artifact equipment. It has a quick creature, has Ward 2, is an assassin in addition to its other types, and it can't be blocked. It has equipped legendary creature 1, and regular equip cost a 3. So this card is really good if you have a bunch of legendary creatures, or you have a commander that you really want to give ward and unblockable. So yeah, I think it's probably very solid in like Voltron decks. It's kind of like a budget Whisper Silk Cloak. If you're attaching it to legendary creatures, it's cheaper overall to utilize this. But it doesn't give Shroud. It gives only Ward 2. So your opponents can target your stuff, but like they do have to pay significant more mana to target it, which is, I mean, still very, very good. So is this good? I think this card is actually is very good, like I just said. I think it's best in decks that really care about your commander and commanders that really care about attacking and dealing combat damage to players. This will enable that very, very easily. It also turns a creature into an assassin. I don't think that's super relevant because, like, if you put this in an assassin deck, then all your creatures are already assassins. And also, it's only good at equipping to legendary creatures. If you're equipping to non-legendary creatures, the equip 3 is kind of a bummer. So yeah, just put in decks that care about attacking with legendary creatures. I also just find the flavor text kind of funny, by the way. It's just an assassin's best armor is not being seen, and then the uniform they're showing is a bright white uniform that all assassins wear. So like, you have an official uniform that is bright white and red, impossible to miss, and they say like, yes, this is our best armor because it helps us be sneaky. Like, what? All right, Brotherhood Regalia. I think it's really solid in a bunch of decks, so great in the 99. Next, we have Brotherhood Spy. This is a 2-mana blue human assassin creature. It's a 1/3, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control a legendary assassin, it gets +1/+0 until the turn it can't be blocked. So if you have a legendary creature on the battlefield, it can be attacking as a 2/3 unblockable for 2 mana. Why do I mention this card? Why did I not skip it? Because of Etrata, obviously. It's really good in Etrata, okay? Turn 1, Assassin. This is your turn 2, Assassin. Then you turn 3, Etrata. You have this legendary Assassin on the battlefield, so this becomes unblockable. And you get the 2 Etrata triggers. It's so good. I love it. Okay, so good in Etrata. I don't think it's going to be good in any other assassin commander, but I mean, if we look at a different one it's good in, then I will put in great in 99. But Etrata. Okay, then we have Bureau Headmaster. This is a 2-mana Boros creature human assassin. It's a 2/2, and it has equipment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and equip abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate. I kind of think this card is gas in an equipment deck. No, like, it's a 2-drop, and it gives a very significant mana discount on both your equipment costs and the equip ability. And compared to other similar cards that do this, the only one that I think is like way better, significantly better, is like Pure Steel Paladin, which is also a 2-drop that can make the equip cost free. It doesn't make a discount on casting your equip spells, but it makes the equip cost free if you have Metalcraft. And then there's like Hammer Nazan and Sigarda's Aid, but Hammer Nazan's a 4-drop, and Sigarda's Aid is only free equips, doesn't make the cost less to cast it. But I think this card is just really good. Is it not really good in equipment decks? I think this is like a slam dunk. I'm not thinking to put it in my Cauldron deck. I think this is just a really ideal 2-drop. You just want to be 2-drop this on turn 2 or whatever, and then turn 3 you start casting your equip thingies. That's good. Yeah, Bureau Headmaster. I think this is a Tomer favorite. Like, it's great in the 99, so it deserves to be here, but I have a Cauldron deck, and it's going into my Cauldron deck, so it is indeed one of my favorites. Sweet. Okay, next we have Caduceus, Staff of Hermes. This is a 3-mana white legendary artifact equipment. It has equipped creature has lifelink, and then as long as you have 30 or more life, equipped creature gets +5/+5 and has indestructible and prevent all damage that would be dealt to this creature, and has equip of 2 white. Now this card is pushed. It's basically a Serra Ascendant in a creature form, but it also gives the creature indestructible. So, you know, we all start at 40 life total, so we already start over 30 life in Commander. So as long as your life didn't drop that much significantly before you play the Caduceus Staff, it's just a 3-mana equipment that for 2 mana to equip, gives a creature +5/+5, indestructible, lifelink, and then prevents all damage that would be dealt to this creature. So yeah, this card is really strong. The wording here is also kind of weird that they went back to this older style wording of 30 or more life. When Commander became a format and they started designing for Commander, they would switch that wording to what was more intended to be something like, if you have 10 more than your starting life total, then you would have this powerful effect. And that would make things balanced for Commander as well. But they reverted it to this, so it's just way better in Commander because you already start at 40 life in Commander, so this is always turned on at the very beginning of the game. So yeah, it's weird that they went back to that older wording, but yeah, this card is just really good. It could be good in basically any deck, obviously, because you're already at 30 or more life, but it's particularly very powerful in a lifelink deck where you're going to be way higher than 40 and you can comfortably have this ability online at any given time. All right, we'll put the Staff in the great in the 99 category. One of the strongest cards we've seen so far, so it's going to be at the very tippity top. Really, really good in life gain decks and probably good in other decks too. Then we've got Chain Assassination. This is a 4 mana black instant that has a free running cost of just 2 mana. Destroy target creature. If another creature died this turn, draw a card. So this is a 2 mana murder effect that if another creature died, you also get to draw a card on top of it. It's really solid in an assassin deck. And then if you can, have another creature die before you cast this spell, then it becomes really, really good. So at 2 mana for free running, it's already very solid. But if you get that draw card as well, then it's just like bonkers good. So yeah, not too much to say about this one. It's obviously very good in an assassin deck. And then if you are in a commander deck where you're attacking with your commander very consistently, and you can kill creatures very consistently at the same time, maybe you're like a commander that is also the aristocrat style deck, then it gets even better. So yeah, it's a really cool card. So Chain Assassination, very easy, great in the 99 in multiple decks. Next we have real world historical figure Cleopatra, Exiled Pharaoh, coming to Magic the Gathering, very weird. This is a 4 mana Golgari legendary creature, human noble. It's a 2/4 and has 2 abilities. The first ability is Allies. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target legendary creatures, and Betrayal. Whenever a legendary creature with counters on it dies, draw a card for each counter on it, you'll lose 2 life. So this is a legendary creature, +1/+1 counters matters, aristocratic style deck. It's very, very weird. It's definitely a build around, unless there are some legendary creature matters decks that have +1/+1 counters on it that can draw a bunch of cards. Maybe you put it like in the 99 of Skullbriar, now that I'm thinking about it. Like Skullbriar, you just load up on +1/+1 counters on it, and it dies a bunch, so then when it does inevitably die, you lose 2 life, but then you draw like 5+ cards. That seems good. Maybe it's a Skullbriar card. I don't know. It's like either a build around or a Skullbriar card. Yeah. But everything is a Skullbriar card to me, so who knows? I don't know. I'm not like super sold on this card yet, so I'm going to just put it in a decent filler engine card, but like it needs to have a home in it, but I'm just like struggling to think which particular home it really is going to go into. I don't know, it's a decent filler card for now. Next we have Crystal Skull Isu Spyglass. This is a 4 mana blue legendary artifact that says you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play historic lands and cast historic spells from the top of your library, and you can tap it to add 1 blue mana. So this is a mana rock for 4 mana, which is not that great, but it's also a future sight that is specific to historic lands and historic spells, which is very, very good in a historic matters deck. Personally speaking, I'm slam dunking this in my Tetsun deck. Again, I mentioned before, I have like 50 or so historic cards in the deck. They're all artifacts. So this is yet another artifact I can add to the deck. So I could not go down in artifacts by adding this, by swapping this in. And then it's a card draw engine and also taps to add 1 mana each turn. That's good. I like it. I think if you are in a historic deck that like has 50 or so historic cards in your deck, this is going to be a great way to utilize the high historic count in your deck to turn it into a very good card advantage, and also it also taps your mana, which is nice. So yeah, Crystal Skull is solid. I think it's best in an artifact deck, but it's very good in any historic deck. It happens to be an artifact as well, so even more synergies in an artifact deck. Next we have Desmond Miles. Is a 2 mana black legendary creature human assassin. It has menace. It's a 1/3, and it gets +1/+0 for each other assassin you control and each assassin card in your graveyard. And when it deals combat damage to players, surveil X, where X is the amount of damage dealt to that player. So it has evasion, not super good evasion, but it hits like a truck in an assassin deck. It can easily do like 6 or more damage every single swing, and that's a lot for a 2-drop. It just has 3 toughness, so you probably want to give it some sort of evasion so it doesn't trade, but it does a lot of damage all by itself, and it will probably trade up. And then also when it deals damage to a player, you get to surveil a whole bunch too. So this is just a slam dunk in assassin decks. It's a finisher. It also fills your graveyard. It's just a really good beater for 2 mana. So Desmond Miles, great in the 99. If it had more colors, maybe it would be also great in the command zone, but as mono black, I think it's just better in the 99. Okay, then we got Desynchronization. This is a 4 mana blue instant. Return each non-land permanent that's not historic to its owner's hand. So this is a board wipe at instant speed for 4 mana in blue. that has a very high restriction. It's non-historic cards. So it's not going to be bouncing anybody's commanders, because those are always going to be legendary. It's not bouncing artifacts, and it's not bouncing sagas. But it's going to be a really great way of instant speed clearing the board of a bunch of stuff that you don't really particularly care about if you're a historic deck. If you're a historic deck, you can basically just see this as a one-sided board wipe, because, you know, if you're a straight-up historic deck and you're like really heavy on historic, being artifacts, legendaries, and sagas, this is not going to affect your board at all. And then at instant speed, it's going to clear out some amount of your opponent's boards at an inopportune time for them. You could do it at their end step, so they might have to discard down to hand size. You could do this in response to them swinging out a huge amount of creatures at you. You could do that at the end step before your next turn, to clear out potential blockers, so you can swing in for lethal. There's a lot of really powerful potential for an instant speed wipe. Like I said, this is not like super consistent, because if your opponents have historic cards on the battlefield that you want to get rid of, well, Desynchronization is not going to do it. But like I said, if you are in a historic deck where you're just not going to be bouncing any of your own stuff, this is an asymmetrical wipe at instant speed in blue, and that's very, very powerful. Like, yeah, it's not going to be super consistent on what you're bouncing on your opponents, but it's still very, very powerful, you know? Like, half of a Cyclonic Rift that's semi-random is still very, very good, you know? So yeah, I think this card is actually really, really good. A slam dunk in any like supercharged historic deck. So Desynchronization, I'm going to put it greater than 99, one of the best ones that we've seen so far. Also looking at the rankings, Crystal Skull is going into one of my paper decks, so let's put Crystal Skull in the Tomer favorites. Desynchronization, I think I'm also putting in Tetsun, so let's put that in Tomer favorites. I'm not like super sold on the Tomer favorite section, because like some people might look at this and be like, oh, these are the most powerful cards in the set, and it's like, no, not really. So what do we do with it? I'm not quite sure. We'll come back to this. Okay, we're going to be skipping Detained by Legionnaires, because this is just a pacifism reprint. It's not super exciting or anything. Then we're going to go to Distract the Guards. This is a 3-mana sorcery that has free running of 2 mana, and you create 3 1/1 white human rogue creature tokens. So a 3-drop that makes 3 tokens is like, it's solid. It's a solid rate. It's playable even in that regard. It's not like super exciting or anything, but it is playable. If you really care about like the creature types, or you really care about just like vomiting out as many tokens as possible. But when you can cast it for 2 mana instead of 3 mana, then it becomes much more exciting. So if you are in a token heavy deck, a deck that really cares about making a bunch of tokens, going wide with them, and you're hitting with assassins or commanders very consistently, and that's like what you're trying to do, maybe like the new Narset, for example, then a 2-drop that generates 3 creatures on the battlefield is actually quite powerful. It's really solid. It's not like game-breaking or anything, not super busted, not going to be the strongest card in your deck, but it's a very good playmaker. It's a very good engine maker. So yeah, Distract the Guards, I'm going to put it in greater than 99. If you're a token deck and you're smacking in with either assassins or your commander, 2 mana, make 3 creatures, just good. Here's a free running card I'm very excited for though. This is Eagle Vision. This is a 5 mana blue sorcery that has a free running cost of just 2 mana, and you get to draw 3 cards. 5 mana, draw 3 cards isn't good. It's a very bad rate at sorcery speed. But you know what? 2 mana, draw 3 cards is an exceptionally high rate. I highly value basically 3-drop, draw 3. I'll run those any day, like Painful Truths. I'll run all those 3-drop, draw 3s. Very happy with those. 2 mana, draw 2. I still like them, and I still run like Sign in Blood and stuff every once in a while, but I'm slowly phasing those out. But you know what I won't phase out in 2024? Maybe at least for like another year or so. 2 mana, draw 3. That's really good. Like, yeah, you have to do your hoop, you have to deal combat damage with an assassin or commander, but if your deck is meant to do that, this is going to be one of the best card draw spells in your deck. Paying 2 mana to draw 3 cards with a very minimum hoop attached to it is just very good. It's just a very good effect. So yeah, I really like this a lot. So Eagle Visions is going to go in the Tomer favorite section. I'm actually going to be putting this not just in Etrata, I keep saying Assassin and Trada, blah, 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 blah. But I'm also going to be putting in my Changeling deck, at least trying it out. 2 mana, draw 3 is good enough to try out in Changelings. All right, and we're going to rename the top category, Tomer Favorites, to Tomer Personal Pickups. How about that? I think that's more descriptive on what these cards are. They're not the most powerful cards. They're just the ones that I'm going to be personally buying from the set. Also the Trada cards. I'm buying also all the Trada cards. These are obviously happening, but I'm also going to be buying these ones. Next, we have another new commander. This is Edward Kenway. This is a 5-mana legendary creature, human assassin pirate. It's a 5/5. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each tapped assassin, pirate, and or vehicle you control. And whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of that player's library, then exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. So this card is kind of loaded on what it's trying to do. The most important thing that it wants to be dealing with is vehicles, but it also wants to have assassins and pirates crewing them. The idea here is that you want to be tapping down your assassins and pirates to crew all your vehicles, and then smashing in with your vehicles to get that sweet combat damage trigger, which is just stealing your opponent's stuff, and then casting them with those sweet treasures you're generating at end step with its first ability. That's a lot of value for a 5-drop. It makes a bunch of treasures, and it's also allowing you to steal potentially a bunch of cards from your opponents. You have to work for it, though. You obviously need to be tapping down assassins and pirates and vehicles, and you want to be smashing in with vehicles. So there's a lot of work here to draw cards and ramp, which is something I like to see personally. And it's also a 5-drop that doesn't have an inherent protection from removal or anything. It's kind of costly. The payoff is really good. You do have to work for it, though. So I see this as a really great commander for a vehicle deck that is also running a bunch of Assassin and Piety Matters cards. You probably want to be aiming towards vehicles and either Assassins or Pirates, because there's not that much overlap between Assassins and Pirates in general, but there is a little bit of it, so you could mix and match however you choose. I think you do want to be focusing on vehicles and then pick like either Assassins and Pirates as being your secondary theme going on in terms of the creatures to crew the vehicle. Overall, though, I think the card is really solid. I think it's really fun. It's a really cool design. I like it. All right, Edward Kenway. Great in the command zone. I think it's very, very solid. Put it over here. I think that's a nice ordering for it. All right, next we have the face commander of one of the starter decks, I think. So it's like meant to be a little bit weaker. I think so, but I like it actually. It's Eivor, battle ready. It's a 5-mana Boros legendary creature, human assassin warrior. It has vigilance, haste, and whenever it attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of equipment you control to each opponent. And it's a 5/5. I like this card. It's a 5-drop that immediately attacks and can block very well. And then if you just have a bunch of equipment, it doesn't have to be attached to Eivor. It could just be on the battlefield wherever. It deals a whole bunch of damage. So if you give it like lifelink or anything on top of it, like you give it a Basilisk color or whatever equipment gives it a lifelink, then you gain life equal to the amount of damage you're dealing, not just with that combat damage, but also with the attack trigger, which can be very, very high. I like it. Is it like good enough to put into equipment decks or lead an equipment deck? Maybe. I think it would be kind of cute if you like went for like a Bloodforged Battle Axe type build with Eivor as the commander, and then you try to just like duplicate as many axes as possible with like doubling season effects and stuff like that, and then you just try to make as many axes as you can and then just burn your opponents out with an Eivor attack trigger. That's very funny to me. I don't think it's like very powerful or anything, but it's a really cute meme. And now that I'm saying that out loud, I really want to do it. Isn't that just a cute meme build? You just do Eivor Bloodforged Battle Axe .deck. I really want to do it. I really want to do it now. That's very cute. Okay, so Eivor, realistically, is probably a filler card. It's not like super powerful or anything. But I'm just like enamored with the idea of going the Bloodforged Battle Axe .deck build with Eivor. So I'm personally very excited for it. I don't think it's going to actually show up in my paper list. I'm definitely going to stream it if possible. Play it on Commander Clash maybe, something like that. So I don't know. I'm going to put in Great in Command Zone because this is my ranking guide. and, you know, I get to do what I want. Okay, I'm going to put it in Grading Command Zone. Yep. Okay, here's the Eivor from the main set, I believe. This is Eivor Wolfkiss. This is a 6-mana Naya legendary creature, human assassin warrior. It's a 7/6 with trample and haste, so whoa, that's some big damage. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may mill that many cards. You may put a saga card and or land card from among them onto the battlefield. Now, this one is interesting because when I see the words saga and or lands, I assume a Dirtle deck, right? Like you want to be playing a bunch of sagas, you want to be ticking down the chapters and everything, you want to be milling and, you know, generating extra lands, maybe do some landfall strategies here. But then you read the fact that this is a 7/6 trample haste and like it has to deal combat damage. So like how many turns do we think our opponents are going to survive if we're going to be consistently getting combat triggers off Eivor? Like, they're dead in 3 hits at the bare maximum, right? If we pump her any further or give her double strike, the people just die even faster than that. So it's kind of bizarre to have like sagas, which are incremental value engines over multiple turns, attached to a 7/6 trample haste that deals combat damage. It kind of seems like a bizarre addition, but I guess what you could focus on is basically just like run sagas that can pump up Eivor, give it double strike. Those things do exist. So that's a really interesting design space, actually. You could run the more aggressive oriented sagas, not the value engine ones, and just like pump up Eivor, pump up your team. Eivor also is going to be generating lands, and you don't have to go like landfall or any land synergy with this ability. You could just have this as extra ramp for your deck, or, you know, to pay the command tax essentially for when Eivor does die. And then you can it helps recast the next iteration of it from the command zone, which is nice. Yeah, I like this one. It smashes phase, it ends games pretty quickly, and you can focus on sagas that are combat oriented and aggressively oriented. I like this one a lot. I like this one a whole bunch, actually. I like smashing, and I like this design. It's really cool. I like it a bunch. Yeah. Eivor sagas. I'm gonna put you. Man, I think, I don't know. Maybe this is the top of the great in the command zone pile. I'm also more interested in Altaïr than Basim. This is, again, not a power ranking scale, but I'm very excited to play Eivor. This seems right up my alley. Okay, now we have another free running card. This is Escape Detection. This is a 3-mana blue instant. Has free running. Return a blue creature you control to its owner's hand. So you don't have to pay any mana for its free running cost. You just have to return a blue card back to your hand. Return target creature to its owner's hand and draw a card. So this is an unsummon that also draws you a card for 3 mana, which is a terrible cost. But the free running cost, if you deal combat damage with an assassin or a commander, it's a 0 mana unsummon. You bounce one of your own creatures, you bounce one of theirs, possibly, and you draw a card. That's very tasty. It also makes the instant part like not that good, the free running, because you have to do it after attacking. So it has to be on your turn. But yeah, this one's a head scratcher. I think this one's still very good in an assassin deck if you have a lot of blue assassins, or like blue creatures, I guess. It could be good in some other commander-centric decks, but the one that I'm thinking the most good in is probably going to be Yuriko, actually. Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. Because Yuriko, you can just deal damage with Yuriko, you ninjutsu her in or whatever, and then you can either bounce her or any other ninja you have that doesn't have evasion back to your hand for its free running cost. Then you bounce something else, and you draw a card for free mana, for free. That seems like really good value. So I think this is like a Yuriko card that happens to also be good in, you know, assassins and maybe some other commander decks. All right, that makes it great in the 99. We'll put it here. We'll put the land over here. I haven't really ordered these that well, but whatever. Yeah, we'll figure it out later. We're gonna skip Escarpment Fortress. I like what it's doing. It's giving your creatures +1/+0, which is quite nice. It's a blocker that's a 3/5, and then it gets you draw you cards when you're attacking with 2 or more creatures. But I just don't like that it's 5 mana. I think you can get these effects for a lot more mana efficient rates outside of 5 mana, and I just don't want to spend that much mana on this effect. So yeah, I'm going to skip that one. Then we're going to go to a partner pairing. The first one is Evie Fry. This is a 2-mana blue legendary creature human assassin. It's a 2/1 and has partner with Jacob Fry. And you can pay 1 mana, tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a creature this way, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. So Jacob hasn't showed up on Scryfall yet. It was one of the last cards revealed, but this is a 3-mana black 3/2 legendary creature human assassin and has partner with Evie Fry. Whenever one or more assassins you control deal combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target assassin card or card with free running from your graveyard. If you do copy it, you may cast a copy. So you still have to pay the mana cost for the copy, I believe. I'm not quite sure. Double check on me, comment section. But regardless, you can cast a free running spell or assassin card, so it's recursion for your assassin deck. And I think that's pretty good. I actually like Jacob just by itself, honestly. It doesn't even have to have partner with, and I kind of like its effect because it doesn't require Jacob dealing the damage, just any of your assassins dealing combat damage. It doesn't have evasion by itself, so it can't really enable itself that well. But it partners with, so it gets a free card out of it whenever you cast it, or it has a partner in the command zone, and it helps your assassins in a meaningful way. I like it. So do I like Evie and Jacob? I think they're a pretty nice partner pair, and I think they're actually pretty good in the command zone. You could put them in the 99, but you can also just put them in the command zone. They kind of enable each other. Evie will discard creatures, hopefully assassins, and then Jacob will be able to copy them, which is a really nice synergy between the two. And also Evie enables unblockable, and then Jacob triggers on dealing combat damage with your assassins. So, they work very well. They're well costed, and you get a 2-for-1 when you're playing them. So I think they are good enough to be the leaders of an assassin deck. I still like Etrata more, but I think they are also good alternatives if you want another Dimir assassin deck leader. But they're also very good in the 99 because you cast one, you get the other one for free. So it's really nice. So Jacob, Evie, great. I would say better in the 99, but you could also put them in the command zone. They're both fine either way. So I'm just going to put them in the 99 for now. Next, we've got Excalibur, Sword of Eden. This is a 12-mana colorless artifact, legendary artifact equipment, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of historic permanents you control. So it costs 12 if you have no historic permanents on the battlefield, but it can cost as low as 0 if you have a total mana value of 12 historic permanents on the battlefield, which could be pretty easy to do, honestly, in a Historic Matters deck once it starts getting going. Equipped creature gets +10/+10 and has Vigilance, and it has equipped legendary creature too. In fact, it doesn't have an equip cost for non-legendary creatures, so unless you have like a Pure Steel Paladin or a similar effect, you're only able to equip this to a legendary creature, which is a nice restriction to it. But yeah, this is a really powerful artifact, right? Like, if you have a commander that just like happens to have like 12 or more mana value to it, you could just literally cast Excalibur for 0 mana once you cast your commander. Like Ghalta, for example. Imagine you just put this in a Ghalta deck. You cast your Ghalta for like 1 green, and then you immediately follow it up with Excalibur, and then your Ghalta is like a 22/22 Vigilance. That seems really powerful. Obviously it's good in like any Historic Matters decks too, but I was just thinking like if you're playing a commander with a very high mana value that has an inherent cost reduction, so you don't actually ever cast it for its mana value like Ghalta, it's very, very funny. But then also in a Historic Matters deck, this is just going to be a really, really good enabler, especially if you're like a Legendary Matters deck. So then you'll have multiple legendary creatures to equip to, but at the very least, you always have a commander that's a legendary creature, so you always have something to equip it to. And then if you put this in like an equipment deck, you can equip it other ways, like Pure Steel Paladin or whatever. Yeah, this card is really powerful. I'm probably going to put it in my culture deck just for the memes. I think giving something +10/+10 and Vigilance is very powerful, but it's just funny also too. But also, just put it in your Ghalta deck. I think that's hilarious. You just one-shot people with a Vigilant Ghalta. That's funny. I like it. Excalibur. Tomer personal pickups. I'm going to put it in my culture deck. All right, next we have Ezio. Auditore de Firenze. Yeah, I'm sure I said that right. 2 mana black, legendary creature, human assassin. but it also has a color identity of Wooburg because of its last ability. But anyway, it has Menace. Assassin spells you cast have free running double black. And whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player, you may pay Wooburg. If that player has 10 or less life, when you do, that player loses the game, and it's a 3-2. So I think the combat damage trigger is cute, but not super relevant to the power of this commander for this creature. I think it's just there as a sneaky way of giving it 5 color identity, so you can just make this your 5 color commander, because the Wooburg there gives it a color identity of 5, all colors, even though it is a 2-mana black creature. So I think that's just how they made it a 2-mana 5-color commander, essentially. It's all about that giving all your assassins free running ability. Like, it's a 3-2 with Menace, decent evasion, and it can start enabling your assassin spells to be costed for 2 mana instead of, more. So it's like a very cheeky mana discount for your assassin spells, which is very cool. And then, yeah, if you do have an opponent who has a 10 or less life and you have Wooburg sitting around and deal damage with Ezio, you could just kill them. Ezio, I have no idea. Anyway, regardless, I think this is a solid contender for an assassin commander. And honestly, it could only go in the command zone because all the other assassin mattering commanders are not 5 colors. So it can't go in the 99 of those. It can only go in the command zone, really. And this is a nice choice. Then you can run all the assassins you want. It's not like a super powerful commander or anything, but if you are loaded with assassins that cost more than 2 mana, then this is a really nice mana discount for it. You have to work for it a little bit, but it is a nice payoff. And yeah, I like it. I still think Etrata is better as an assassin leader. But if you want to run like the Boros assassins and everything, we've seen assassins every single color type. So you can run all of them under Ezio, which is cool. So Ezio, I'm going to put you in great in the command zone. I'll put you somewhere over here, I think. I think like this is going to be the most popular assassin commander. It's really good as a mana discount for if you have a bunch of assassin spells that cost more than 2. And obviously, if you do stuff like Arcane Adaptation or whatever, and you turn all your spells, your creatures and stuff into assassins, then it gets even spicier with the possibilities. But it's still good just as a plain old assassin commander too. Next we have the starter deck Ezio, which is much more nerfed. It's a 5-mana Dimir, legendary creature, human assassin. It's a 5/5 with death touch, and whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So this is a 5-mana 5/5 assassin, so assassin synergy, and then it's a coastal piracy effect for your assassins. You deal combat damage, you draw a card. It's fine. It's like a solid playmaker in an assassin deck. It's just a bit overcosted for what it's doing, right? Like, being a 5-mana 5/5 is like, it's fine. Drawing cards in Assassin is obviously very good. But like, if this was not the starter deck kind of face of the deck, it would probably be like 4 mana or something like that. But yeah, it's a solid card. I think it's just better in the 99 than the command zone because they're just spicier commanders to put in the command zone. So Ezio, great in the 99, I'd say, of assassins. Yeah, maybe even just decent. Like, I would probably cut it most often, but I don't know. Let's put in great in 99. Next, we have 2 more cards that I'm just going to be skipping over. Ezio, Brash Novice, I just don't think is very good in Commander. Follow the First Civilization. If you are a Secret Rendezvous believer, I think this is just a better Secret Rendezvous because it does more things afterwards. But I don't think it's very good, so I'm skipping it as well. Haters, leave a hateful comment in the comment section. Actually, don't do that. Why am I saying that? Whatever. We're going to be moving on to this card, which is actually Javi the Allfather. This is a 6-mana Naya legendary creature god warrior. It's a 6/6, and as long as there are 4 or more historic cards in your graveyard, Javi has indestructible, so that god ability going on. And then whenever it or another legendary creature you control dies, return target legendary creature card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is a 6-mana 6/6. Usually going to have indestructible. It's historic matters. Specifically legendary creatures mattering. And you want to do some aristocratic looping going around with it. That's an interesting design space. I like it. It's a 6-drop, so it's on the expensive end. But keep in mind that it's most likely going to have indestructible, so it's going to be relatively difficult to remove from the battlefield, which I like. I think your 6 drops need to have some sort of board resiliency to be worthy of the command zone. And then its effect is very powerful. Like, you just sacrifice legendary creatures or whatever, and then get back other legendary creatures and loop them around for a value. That seems really good. It's definitely build aroundy. I just don't know what the actual build will be and how we're going to be winning off of it, but I like it. You can also just toss it in the 99, obviously, of like a Joda deck or whatever, and then if somebody wipes your board, you're going to get half of the board back or whatever. It's like a scrap trawler for legendary creatures, essentially. All right, Javi, I think is a great in the command zone, honestly. I'll put it there. Okay, now we have a card I'm legitimately incredibly excited for, and it's Haystack. I'm very excited for Haystack. It's a 2-mana white artifact, and you could pay 2 mana, tap it, target creature you control phases out. So this is like really great protection spell, or protective card, that you could activate at instant speed. Costs 2 mana, so you have to keep 2 mana up, but then you phase out a creature, and it will dodge any form of removal at that point, right? Exile removal, balances, sacrifice, anything, it doesn't matter. The Haystack will save it, and I love that. If you're like in a Voltron deck that has like a bunch of auras or equipments or whatever, or +1/+1 counters or whatever, and you really don't want that thing to die, you run Haystack, and then for 2 mana you just keep 2 mana up, and it's going to be a nightmare for your opponents to actually deal with that thing because it can just jump into the Haystack whenever it's in trouble. I love it. It's very cute. And then obviously if you have like Haystack and then you have like other protection spells in response to, so if your opponents try to gang up on you, they're like, okay, somebody wastes a removal spell so they can activate Haystack, and then I'll follow up with blah, blah, blah. And you have like 2 mana up for the Haystack, and then 1 more mana up for like some just like the Tameo safekeeping or something like that. Then it feels really nice. But yeah, I love Haystack. I think this card is going to be fantastic for basically any Voltron deck, or any deck that really needs your commander not to die. It really needs it on the battlefield. Haystack is going to help you do that in white. Haystack, I think it's going to end up in one of my decks somewhere, so I'm just going to put it in the personal pickup section. Okay, now we have Haytham Kenway. This is a 4-mana Azorius legendary creature human knight. There's a spelling error over here on Scryfall. As protection from assassins. Other knights you control get +2/+2 and have protection from assassins. It's a 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls until it leaves the battlefield. So this is the ETB Grasp of Fate, kind of, for only your opponent's creatures. So you can nab up to 3 things when Haytham enters the battlefield. And yeah, that's cool. And it pumps up your knights, and it's a knight yourself. So it could go into 99 of a knight deck. It could maybe be a blink card. Protector from assassins is like fluff, really. But yeah, I think it's okay. It's like decent filler, I think. All right, Haytham. I think it's decent filler. I don't think it's like super good, but yeah, it's cute. Okay, we're going to skip over Head Splitter. I think this is only good in like a Nahiri deck that you really want to play equipments that immediately come equipped to a creature. Hemlock Vial, we're also going to skip. I think there could be some builds that are going like Cheerios style. Not Cheerios style, eggs. Goes for eggs, and maybe it could be playable, but I mean, it has a black color pip, so you can't cast it for 0 ever. We're also going to be skipping Hidden Blade and Hidden Footblade and Hook Blade. All of these are cheap equipments that you can cast. 2 of them have flash, and all of them enter the battlefield equipped onto a creature. They have their uses in specific decks, but it's incredibly narrow on when you actually want to be using them. And I think they only show up in like 1 or 2 commanders. Like, for example, Hidden Footblade, I'll put in my Valduk deck, for example. So it makes an elemental for every single equipment and enchantment on it. That's nice. We're going to skip all of those, and we're going to go straight to Hookblade Veteran. Hookblade Veteran, it's a 1-mana blue creature human assassin. It's a 1/2, and as long as it's your turn, it has flying. So this card is very good in Edric, obviously. It's a 1-mana evasion creature, and it's even better in Etrata. Yes, we're back to Etrata. We're back on the Etrata train. It's an assassin. It's a 1-drop. It has flying on your turn. That's all that matters. It's your turn 1 play into turn 2, other evasive assassin, into turn 3, Etrata, and get that value. All right, the veteran. It goes into the Etrata category, and it's the best out of all of them, actually, even better than Initiate. Hunter's Bow is of the same cycle of like when they enter the battlefield, it immediately attaches and does something, but I think it's like by far the best of the bunch. It enters the battlefield, and then you get to bite an opponent's creature, which is just like removal for green, which is very good. And then also it gives the creature ward 2, which is also very nice, and only has an equip cost of ward of 1. So all good things. I think this card is actually the best of the ones that like auto attach from Assassin's Creed. It's a relevant effect, and it's on an equipment, so it has more appeal to me, I think. Okay, Hunter's Bow. We will put it in great in the 99. Next we have Jackdaw. This is a 3-mana Izzet legendary artifact vehicle. It's a 4/4 with crew 3. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw a card for each artifact you control. Oh boy. Okay, so artifact decks usually have a lot of artifacts. And Jackdaw is even an artifact itself. So for the measly cost of dealing combat damage with a 4/4 with no evasion, and discarding your hand of like, I don't know, 4 cards or whatever, you get to draw a lot of cards. Like, there's artifact lands, you're going to be having artifacts, billions of artifacts on the battlefield. You'll draw a lot of cards off the Jackdaw. You might even deck yourself. And you know what? I love all those things. I'm a dirty artifact player. I'm shameless. My Tetsun deck will love this. My Tetsun deck is going to buy a boat. The only downside is, yes, it is crew 3. And also it doesn't have any sort of evasion. And it has to deal combat damage. And it doesn't have haste. So there are hoops to jump through this. But then the bonus is that you're going to draw so many cards in an artifact deck. Or even if you're just like a treasure deck or whatever, you just make a bunch of treasures and then draw that many cards. Have a fun time. Lots of hoops to jump through it, but I'll jump through those hoops. I want to draw 15 cards. Why not? That sounds great to me. All right, Jackdaw, I will put you in my personal pickups for Tetsun. Okay, we have Cassandra, Eagle Bearer. This is a 3-mana Boros, legendary creature, human assassin warrior. It's a 2/2 with haste, and when it enters the battlefield, search your graveyard, hand, and library for a card named the Spear of Leonidas. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And whenever a creature you control with a legendary equipment attached to it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So 3 mana, 2/2 haste, immediately finds the Spear of Leonidas. It could be in your hand, graveyard, or library, anywhere, and just puts it directly onto the battlefield, which is quite nice. And then it also draws you cards off dealing damage with legendary equipment. So legendary equipment matters. Commander, maybe? And it comes with this, the Spear of Leonidas. It's a 3-mana legendary equipment, red, equipped 2. And then whenever the equipped creature attacks, you choose one of these modes. So the first mode is double strike until end of turn, or you create Phobos, legendary 3/2 red horse creature token, or you discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. So it's always relevant on what it's trying to do. Either it does a lot more damage with double strike, or it puts a body on the battlefield, or it rummages for you. That's really nice to do. It doesn't give any like pump effects to the equipped creature. The equipped creature doesn't get like +2/+2 or anything. There's no evasion. It has a equip cost of 2, but you know what? It comes onto the battlefield for free when you cast Cassandra. So where do I think this card fits? I think it's mostly a command zone card. You want to put Cassandra in the command zone because you play this on turn 3. You get Cassandra on the battlefield and you get the spear on the battlefield. Then the next turn, you can equip it for free, or if like turn 2, you had some way of equipping her for free. On turn 3, she immediately swings in and starts dealing some massive damage. Also, it's whenever it deals combat damage, and the spear gives a double strike, so you can even just draw 2 cards every single time you're attacking with Cassandra and the Spear of Leonidas if you choose a double strike option. That's all really good. I like all of that. I don't know if you go Voltron with her, or you try to go wide and have a lot of creatures equipped with legendary equipment or something, but it is interesting to me. All right, so Cassandra and her spear, I think great in the command zone. So the spear goes into the 99. Keen-Eyed Raven, I think, is kind of weak, so we'll skip it. Labyrinth Adversary, kind of weak unless you're in a Minotaur deck. I'll skip it. We'll go to Layla Hassan. Layla Hassan, 4 mana, white, legendary creature, human assassin. It's a 3/4 with first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, and whenever one or more assassins you control deal combat damage to a player, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. So graveyard recursion at a very mana efficient rate. ETB, recur a historic card, but then also when you're assassins, and she's an assassin herself, deal combat damage, you could return more historic cards from your graveyard to your hand. Very good value. not like super exciting in the command zone, but in the 99 of decks that are historic heavy and focus probably mostly on either sacrificing your historic permanents for value or just milling them, you can get back a lot of cards. It's a lot of card advantage with her. So I like her. She's nice. In the 99 though. All right, Layla, I'll put great in the 99. And now we have Leonardo da Vinci entering Magic the Gathering. What a day. This is a 3-mana blue legendary creature human artificer. It has 2 active abilities and it's a 3/3. The first activated ability is 5 mana, 3 in double blue. Until end of turn, Thopters you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. And then you can pay 3 mana, 2 blue, tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. If the discarded card was an artifact card, exile it from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 0/2 Thopter artifact creature with flying in addition to its other types. Yes. Okay, so this card looks like it wants to do something like unfair. I assume if you're running this card, you're not just going like generic Thopters, are you? You're gonna go, well, maybe go Thopters. You just go straight up Thopters. You play as many Thops as possible. Use that 5 mana activate ability, the first one, to just pump up the team. And then the next ability, what do you do with it? What's the weirdest thing you can copy of it? I think you're gonna just be copying like huge top end artifacts that just are disgusting. Like the first one you'll draw, you'll discard, and you'll discard like a Darksteel Forge. Now your entire board is indestructible. Is there anything that's like an artifact that you can discard, make a copy of, and it's going to draw you 1 billion cards or make you like 1 billion mana? I'm sure there are. You just like find stuff that like artifacts that are super powerful that cost like more than 6 mana, and then that loot ability is going to be very, very strong. And then the first ability is just like you win the game when you have enough cards in your hand, I guess. It's strong. It's strong. It's nonsense. It's Leonardo da Vinci, so I guess it lives up to the reputation of being nonsense and very powerful. Yeah. Interesting. Leonardo da Vinci and Magic. Okay. I think Da Vinci's a commander. I think this is something that you want to build around, and if you let him tap, you probably are going to regret it. If you let him activate his second ability, you're probably going to regret it. All right, we have Lydia Fry. This is a 3-mana Dimir hybrid. Legendary creature, human assassin, is a 3/2. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So pseudo evasion, not the best, but okay. And then at the beginning of your end step, surveil X, where X is the number of tapped assassins you control. I think this works a little bit better with the assassins that care about like crewing vehicles and stuff, because then you can tap down a bunch of assassins to crew vehicles, and then you could get that sweet surveil ability without needing to attack. But giving Lydia evasion or just attacking people who have big creatures is another way of tapping her down and getting value out of her. She's an assassin, so she fits in the assassin decks. And yeah, I like her in the 99. Now, yeah, the commander's kind of boring, but in the 99, quite solid. All right, Lydia, great in the 99. All right, we got more legendary creatures. This is Mary Reed and Anne Bonny. This is 3 mana. Is it legendary creature, human assassin pirate? It's a 3/3 with haste. Tap it, draw a card, and discard a card. Whenever you discard an island, pirate, or vehicle card, create a tapped treasure token. So this is not capped or anything. This effect is just 3 mana. It's a looter, can immediately loot the turn it's cast, and then you get to make treasure tokens when you're discarding islands, pirates, or vehicle cards. And then also, like, whenever you're like cycling or, you know, doing any sort of like looting, you don't have to, or any sort of discarding, you don't have to be discarding with this ability to make the tap treasure token. You could just do a whole bunch of different stuff. Or you can like wheel, you can like windfall and discard a whole bunch of islands and pirates and vehicles and make a whole bunch of treasures. The fact that they enter tapped makes it a little bit harder to combo off, I think. But if you have like an Amulet of Vigor or something, anything to untap the treasure tokens when they enter tapped, you can probably combo off very easily. I'm not quite sure how you combo off with them, but I think Amulet of Vigor is probably the key to do so very easily. Maybe you don't even need to. Maybe if you don't need to untap them, I don't know. This card is very, very strong, but it's definitely, it feels like a combo card. I guess you could play it also fairly, but it feels like a combo commander, honestly. So yeah, I think this is very good in like a pirate, in the 99 of a pirate deck or whatever. But I think it's also a really strong build around, because I'm sure there are some combos you can get with these that is a commander. All right, Merciless Harlequin is an Elvish visionary for assassins, which I think makes it good enough to show up in basically any assassin deck, but it's not that much to talk about, so we'll skip it. Miss Theos's Fury, I think, is just bad in Commander, so we'll skip it. We'll go to Mjolnir. Mjolnir, Storm Hammer. This is a 4-mana colorless legendary artifact equipment. It has equip 4, but when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target legendary creature you control, and whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and put a stun counter on it. Then Mjolnir deals damage equal to each opponent, equal to the number of tapped creatures that opponent controls. So this is a really cool design space. It wants your opponent's creatures to be tapped down, and it wants them to have a lot of tapped down creatures to deal a lot of damage with it. Is it good? It's okay. I mean, it stuns creatures, which is nice. It doesn't pump up your creature in any given way. The equip cost is quite high, but I mean, it enters the battlefield equipped onto a legendary creature, which is nice. I don't know. It's nice but narrow. Like, I think you want to put it in a deck that taps down your creatures for value, or taps down your opponent's creatures for value. Which is, there's like a Snow Queen or something from Eldraine, Wilds of Eldraine, that does it in Azorius colors. So this would fit very well. If you can give this lifelink, I think there's like a rune or something that gives enchanted equipment lifelink, then it also will gain you a bunch of life as well. That could be cute. Yeah, it's cute. It's narrow but cute. Okay, Mjolnir, I'll give you good in 99, great in 99. Sure, why not? We got Origin and the Hidden Ones that we're skipping. I think the saga is just kind of weak, so we'll skip that. Palazzo Archers, I think, is also kind of weak. Just kind of is like a little bit of a propaganda type effect against creatures that fly. It's not very good. We'll move on to Petty Larceny. Petty Larceny, 4 mana, black sorcery or free running 2. Look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library and exile those cards face down. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. Create a treasure token. I think if you can activate the free running cost, this card is decent value. You get to basically draw 2 cards. For 2 mana, you get to draw 2 cards and make a treasure token. Granted, you're drawing cards off your opponent's library, not your own, so less synergy potential. But if you're in a Theft deck or an Exile Matters deck, and you can still activate the free running cost, it becomes much, much better. So Petty Larceny, great in the 99 of like assassin decks, evasive commander decks, and specifically ones that have like theft synergies going on. We'll skip Phantom Blade, 5 mana, murder something on ETB is interesting, but just a little bit overcosted, I think, I want to say. Poison Blade Mentor, 2 mana, it has Death Touch from an assassin, and then, you know, another creature will also have Death Touch. That's kind of good. That's probably worth it in an assassin deck, but just not very interesting. I'll skip it. We'll move on to this one. This is, okay, Raton Haketon. Did I say it right? Let me know in the comment section. It's a 3 mana Esper legendary creature, human assassin. As long as it hasn't dealt damage yet, it has hexproof and can't be blocked. That's very cool. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with menace. When you do, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield, then attach it to that token. And it's a 3/3. So 3-drop. Hexproof, can't be blocked until it deals damage, and then the first time it does it, or any time it does it rather, you make a 1/1 and you could recur an equipment from the battlefield. There's a lot of hoops to get here, but there's a lot of value as well. So you need to have equipments in the graveyard, so you probably want to have a little bit of like self-milling going on to get equipments into the graveyard. Otherwise it's not very good. You could blink it, so it can get hexproof and unblockable again if you want, but that might be a little bit too much. I don't think it's very good. I don't think it's very good. It's a 3-drop. It gives you 3 colors. That's powerful. It could return big equipments from the graveyard to the battlefield, but it's like it's very situational. I feel like this card's very situational on what it's trying to do, I think. I don't know. I'm not super sold on it, but let me know what you want to do with it. All right, I'll put it in the decent filler section. Ravenclan War Axe, we're going to skip. It's not very good. We'll move to Restart Sequence. I think this card is very good. It's a 4 mana black sorcery, but it has free running of 2. return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. 2 mana, Reanimate is just very solid. Obviously it's not as good as Reanimate itself, but you also don't have to lose life, which is kind of nice. So yeah, if you can turn on the free running cost, paying 2 mana to just reanimate something is solid. And if you can't, then it's not good. All right, restart sequence, greater than 99. All right, then we got Rooftop Bypass. This is a 3 mana Dimir enchantment. It says whenever one or more non-token creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 black assassin creature token to a menace. So again, great in an assassin deck. You just attack with non-token assassins and you make a bunch of more assassins and they have menace, so they can also attack, and that's good. That's solid value for 3 mana as an enchantment. Not like busted or anything, but a nice inclusion in any assassin deck. Okay, Rooftop Bypass, greater than 99 of assassins. Okay, here's a card I'm very excited for. This is Roshan, Hidden Magister. This is a 4 mana black legendary creature human assassin. It's a 4/4 and it says other creatures you control are assassins in addition to the other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Face down creatures you control have menace, and whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Now, dear viewers, please look at Roshan. It helps turn all your other creatures into assassins, and it benefits face down creatures a lot. It basically says, like, you want to be cloaking, for example, and you want those cloaked creatures to also be assassins for some reason. And I posit the question, why? Is Roshan going to be in the command zone? Probably not. It's mono black. It's pretty limiting if you want to go for like an assassin's deck or a face down deck. And all the other assassin commanders that we looked at don't have this stipulation about face down creatures really. This is an Etrata card. They seeded this for me and me alone as the #1 Etrata fan. This is just an Etrata card. This is the best card in Etrata. It turns all your cloaked creatures into assassins, so you benefit tremendously from a bunch of synergies. It gives them menace, so it's easier for them to be attacking. And then also when you're turning them face up with Etrata's ability, or just like flipping them up with Cloak, then you get to also draw cards. This is a perfect card made for me and me alone for my Etrata deck. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast, if you're watching this. All right, Roshan, top of the Etrata pile. This is just made for Etrata. It's made to be in the 99 of Etrata. Everybody who plays Etrata, there's dozens of us. We're very, very happy. Here's another card I absolutely love. This is Senyu, Keen-Eyed Protector. This is a 2 mana white legendary creature bird scout. It's a 2/1 with flying and vigilance, and you can tap it, exile it. You gain 2 life and you scry 2. And then when a legendary creature you control attacks and isn't blocked, if it's exiled, put it onto the battlefield attacking. So I love this card. This is a 2 mana, 2/1 flyer. It's constantly hitting in there for damage, triggering combat triggers or whatever. It can hold swords or whatever. That's all well and good. Nothing busted, nothing particularly that exciting. But as you're attacking with legendary creatures, and you know that they're going to be attacking and they're not going to be blocked, you could just exile Senyu, gain some life, scry 2, and then just get Senyu immediately back attacking. You don't miss out on any damage or anything. And you just keep doing that over and over again. Every time you're attacking with legendary creatures and you know they aren't going to be blocked, you just, exile this preemptively, get some extra value, and then it comes right back. It's really cute. It feels like what a bird scout should have mechanically. I love the design. It's not like super powerful or anything, but it's just really cute. I love like the flavor of it with the card design. I've never played any Assassin's Creed decks at all, but I just like it. I like the idea of the bird scouts just like flying away, getting used a little bit of advantage, surveying, scouting with the scry, and then just coming back when you're ready to go. And that's really cute. I love it. I love it to death. It's really cute. I'm not going to put Senyu in any decks of my own, but I feel like if you're in a bird deck, or if you care about like enter the battlefield triggers or legendary creatures entering the battlefield, then it can be quite powerful. So I'm going to put in greater than 99. We're going to skip Settlement Blacksmith, 3 mana, 3/3 that ETB draws a card. If you're in an equipment deck, I don't think is very good. We'll go to Xiao Jun. This is a 3 mana Izzet 3/3 legendary creature, human assassin. It has 2 abilities. As long as it's your turn, it has flying and first strike, and tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. So, it has flying and first strike, and it's a human assassin, so it could turn on free running very easily. And if you have like a bunch of artifacts or clues or whatever on the battlefield, you can start tapping them down and dealing a bunch of damage to your opponents. Obviously, it works very well, again, with like Torburn effects, anything that increases the damage dealt. And also, if you can give it lifelink, you gain a bunch of life in the process. Good value for a 3-drop. Is it a commander? Is it a 99? I think this is a build around. Probably a build around, like a build around artifact deck. Artifact token deck, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it's just a finisher. I don't know. Yeah, you know what? I'll put it in the 99. I think it's strong as a finisher, but you don't need the finisher in the command zone, really. Okay, next we have Sean and Rebecca Agents. This is a 4-mana Bant legendary creature, human assassin scientist. Cool. It's a 4/4 with vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, search your graveyard, hand, and library for a card named the Animus and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle, and you can tap it to add 1 colorless. When you do, mill 2 cards. And the Animus is a 2-mana colorless legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target legendary creature card from a graveyard with a memory counter on it. And then you can tap it until your next turn. Target legendary creature you control becomes a copy of target creature card in exile with a memory counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So I guess the idea with the Animus, that's basically like it's an Animus deck, essentially. The idea of the Animus is that you have like a legendary creature card on the battlefield that's small, like a 1-drop or a 2-drop, and then you like mill or entomb a really big, scary legendary creature card, maybe like an Eldrazi Titan or something, the ones that don't shuffle themselves away. You put something really scary, a big legendary creature in the graveyard, and imprint it with the Animus, and then turn your smaller legendary creature into the scary one, and then swing in and hopefully win the game. And then the agents just like immediately put it onto the battlefield, and they tap and they mill a little bit, so they kind of enable the Animus. But basically, it's like running the Animus in the command zone, and you know this gives you access to 3 colors to work with, and you know, can get the Animus back. You know, if the Animus dies or whatever, you can blink Sean and Rebecca, or you just recast it or whatever, and it comes back or something. That's fine. I think it's cool. It's an Animus deck. It looks very scary, honestly. I feel like if the Animus does this thing, you're gonna die very quickly. But yeah, I think it's cool. It's a very cool effect, and it's cool to have it in the command zone. You're having basically like a hidden commander. Not so hidden, really. It says it on the card, but it brings something else that's the main focus of the deck that isn't this legendary itself. That's cool. So Sean and Rebecca, absolutely commanders. It's an Animus deck, and you really want to have access to the Animus if you're building around it. So putting in the command zone is quite obvious here. And the Animus is also great in the 99, so that's nice. Okay, next we have Shay Cormac. This is a 2-mana or resolve legendary creature, human knight rogue. It's a 1/1, pay 1 mana, permanents you control lose hexproof, indestructible, protection, shroud, and ward until end of turn. Love to see it. And whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability that you control, put a power counter on it. And whenever a creature with a boundary counter on it dies, put 2+1/+1 counters on Shay. I don't think Shay is a very exciting commander, but it is a nice little like middle finger to people who have like a lot of protection. This is like a Shadow Spear, but like a much more thorough Shadow Spear. Removes everything, any form of protection from your opponent's stuff, which I like. I like a lot. Not as a commander, but I like it in the 99. It's a human knight rogue, so it fits in different archetypes. Also, it deals with bounty counters, and there are some commanders that actually care about bounty counters as well. They put bounty counters on their own terms, or they draw you cards when stuff with bounty counters dies. So you can start building like a bounty counter style deck with this in the 99. That could be very cute. And yeah, I like it. It's a really great way of like removing protections from your opponents so you can start killing their stuff. Great in the 99 for Shay. Next, we have Sigurd, Jarl of Ravensthorpe. This is a 3-mana Naya legendary creature, human warrior. It's a Vigilance Trample lifelink, and it has Boast, pay 1 mana, put a lore counter on target saga you control, or remove one from it. Activate only if this creature has attacked this turn and only once each turn. And whenever you put a lore counter on a saga you control, put a +1/+1 counter on up to one other target creature. All right, so we talked about Evie or whatever her name was as like Naya aggressive sagas mattering, and I liked it a lot. I think Sigurd might be even better in the command zone just because, you know, it comes out much earlier. It's a very solid body, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, so it's something that you definitely want to pump up with +1/+1 counters or whatever. You focus on just like sagas that are very aggressively oriented, and then the boast ability you can start using like immediately on like turn 4 or whatever. And then when you're doing that, your sagas are pumping up your creatures with Sigurd, and you can start doing more damage. I like this a lot. This is a very cool commander. I'm super stoked and super sold on Naya aggressive smashy sagas. That's just such a cool... I never thought about sagas as like an aggressive archetype, you know? I always associated them with like Enchantress, Super Dirtle, but this is like, no, we can take sagas and we can kill people with them, and I love that. That's cute. I like it a lot. All right, Sigurd, you might be my favorite of the new commanders, I think. Yep, you're my favorite. You're my favorite one. Out of all of these, this is the one I'm most excited to play, I think. Okay, here's another card I absolutely love. This is Smoke Bomb. 3 mana, colorless artifact. It has flash. All creatures have shrouds. They can't be the target of spells or abilities. And unlike hexproof, that means like if I'm trying to target my own creature and it has shroud, not happening. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Smoke Bomb. When you do, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. I love this card. I love this card so much because it's so versatile. For 3 mana, you can just be like, bam, Smoke Bomb. Somebody tries to Swords of Plowshares your creature, like, nope, Smoke Bomb. Or like somebody tries to target their own creatures for something beneficial, you're like, Smoke Bomb, countered, essentially. And then, you know, afterwards, you sacrifice it, and then you get something unblockable, and you get smashed in there for damage on your next turn. I love all this. This is all great. Love is great. It's cute. Maybe it's a little bit too narrow. Maybe it's a little bit too narrow, but I love it to death. And also just like the mechanics matching the flavor, chef's kiss, no notes, great card. Okay, Smoke Bomb. One of my favorite cards in the 99. Possibly my favorite card in the 99 from the entire set. I just love the flavor. It's just so good. It's so good. You know what? I'm probably going to put it in Tetsun. Personal pickup. Yeah, I'll put it in Tetsun. It's an artifact. Why not? Next, we have Socrates. The famous Athenian scholar has arrived to Magic the Gathering. What a world. What a world. It's a 3 mana Saurius legendary creature. Human advisor. It's a 0/4 defender. It has hexproof as long as it's untapped, and you can engage in Socratic dialogue with your opponents until end of turn. Target creature gains. If this creature would deal combat damage to a player, prevent that damage. This creature's controlled and that player each draw half that many cards rounded down. So it's like a little bit of a fog, but you know, you draw cards or whoever dies. He's trying to stop damage. He's trying to prevent war, and everybody who's involved gets to draw cards instead. Very cute. You know what? I love the design is very cute. I think like realistically, how would we use this in Commander? I would think you could put this in like the Council of 4 or something, where you actually want your opponents to be drawing cards because then you're going to be drawing cards as well. So you kind of break the symmetry of these type of effects by gaining even more value out of your opponents. So that's cool. You can put this also as a Commander. I feel like you could do like real world historical figures as a Commander thing right now. Like we have Socrates. We have Leonardo da Vinci. We have Cleopatra. Do we have another one? Do we have another one as number 4 and just like historical figures in Magic the Gathering and do a Commander table like that? I want to do that just for the memes. Why not? So Socrates, I don't think it's very good. I might make the cut in like a council deck or something, but it's not very good. Decent filler. Okay, Spartan Veteran, we're just going to skip. This is not very good in Commander. We're going to move straight to Staff of Eden, Vault's Key. This is a 6 mana colorless legendary artifact. When it enters the battlefield, put target legendary permanent card not named Staff of Eden from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Very nice. And you can tap it, draw a card for each permanent you control but don't own. Oh, wow. Oh, I like this. Okay. So number 1, Etrata. Like, this is obviously the best card for Etrata. You're going to be stealing so many cards for no mana at all. You just cloak a whole bunch of stuff off your opponent's libraries, and then you get to draw a billion cards off Staff of Eden every single turn. But then like any theft commander, obviously, any way of, if you're like switcherooing, like swapping permanents around, like Zedru maybe, or like, you know, more traditional theft style decks like Gonti or whatever, you'll have a field day with Staff of Eden, obviously. But I think it's just like, it's so good in Etrata. It's like so good in Etrata. But yeah, it's very good in multiple decks. It's a good card. Very, very interesting, very powerful. Like obviously, even its like ETB trigger is very powerful too. So you can like blink it or whatever. You like Goblin Welder it onto the battlefield because it's not a cast trigger. It's just very strong. It's one of the strongest cards we've seen in the set, I believe. All right, next we have Surtur of Fiery Jotun. Fuzz. Let me know in the comment section. 5 mana red, legendary creature, giant god warrior. It has trample. It's a 5/5. Whenever you cast a historic spell, it deals 3 damage to any target. So if you go like Cheerios or whatever, and you cast a whole bunch of historic spells in a row, Surtur can count as kind of like a win con, basically. That's pretty sweet. It's a giant, so it fits very well in there's like an There's an Izzet giant burn commander. I forget its name. I'm gonna put it on the screen right now. That it's gonna be very good there because if you do excess damage, you draw a card each time you're activating Surtur. Yeah, it's a good card. It's fun. I think it's very solid in the 99. Like you could put it as your commander, but like I feel like it's better off in the 99 of decks instead. Next we have Tax Collector. It's a 2-mana white creature human advisor. It's a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you either tax people until your next turn, spells your opponent's cost cast 1 more to cast, or you can arrest people, detain target creature, and arrest opponent controls. Oh, wow. It says detain target creature and opponent controls. Scryfall is a little bit drunk. I think this card is actually kind of solid in a blink deck, and by solid I mean miserable. Because, well, blink decks are always miserable, but this is going to be extra miserable. Because, like, you just tax your opponents over and over again, and if they want to attack you and they have stuff on the battlefield already, you just detain them over and over again, and you just keep blinking them. It's just a really good blink, annoying card. That's always going to be annoying no matter what mode they choose. So yeah, very good in blink, and by that I mean miserable. Very miserable for everybody. Except the blink player. The blink player is going to have fun. All right, Tax Collector, very good in blink decks. Next, we got Templar Knight. This is a 2-mana white creature human knight. It's a 3/1 vigilance, and it has 1 white, tap 5 untapped attacking creatures you control named Templar Knight. Search your library for a legendary artifact card, put it onto the battlefield, and shuffle. And this is the first ever white card that says a deck can have any number of cards named Templar Knight. I think there's a blue one, there's Persistent Petitioners, there's like a black one. I think there's multiple black ones actually that do this thing. But this is the white one. And it is cool. It could get a legendary artifact and put it directly onto the battlefield. I don't know what the most powerful thing is that you can grab off it immediately. Obviously, like if Paradox Engine was unbanned, that would be the first thing you would get, and then you just like vomit out your deck. But yeah, it's strong. It's gonna do all the shenanigans of like any number of cards X decks do. Like there's like the Ripple card or something that can just vomit them all out onto the battlefield. Yeah, it could be powerful. I'm not sure what it's going to be doing in particular, or if white enables anything that the other ones didn't, but it's going to be cool to see. All right, Templar Knight, great in the 99. Well, it's essentially a commander, right? Like you build around this card, so it's essentially like an unofficial commander. I'll put it in the command zone. You know what? Boom. Next, we have a saga that I think is pretty impressive. It's the Aesir Escape Valhalla. It's pretty slow, but it's a 3-mana green enchantment saga. It has 3 chapters. The first one, you exile a permanent card from your graveyard. You gain life equal to its mana value. Then chapter 2, you put a number of +1/+1 counters on target creature you control equal to the mana value of the exiled card. And then chapter 3, you return it and the exiled card to its owner's hand, and then you can like recast the Aesir and keep doing it. So first one, you gain life. First turn, you gain life. Second turn, you get a bunch of +1/+1 counters. Third turn, you return that card that you exiled from the graveyard and the saga back to your hand, so it's graveyard recursion, and then you could repeat the process over and over again. I think this type of card is going to be really good. First of all, if you have like high mana value permanents in your graveyard, at least like 5 mana value or something, then it's worthy of escaping with the saga. But then also, if you have like a saga deck where you can put more and more counters on it, and you can burn through the saga very quickly, then it becomes really powerful because, you know, when it finishes its last chapter, it doesn't go into the graveyard. You could actually just reuse it. So if you have any ways of proliferating, adding chapters to it, or rather lore counters to it quickly, then you could actually get a lot of value out of this card. All right, so we're going to put the enchantment as great in the 99, basically in like a saga deck that can put more lore counters onto it, or anything that proliferates, then it's very good. Next we have the Capitoline Triad. This is a 10 mana legendary creature, God Artificer. It's a 7/7, and it has Those Who Came Before. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each historic card in your graveyard. So it costs 10 mana without anything in your graveyard, but if you have a bunch of historic cards in your graveyard, up to 10, it could cost as little as 0 mana, which is very exciting. And then it has an ability, exile any number of historic cards from your graveyard with a total mana value 30 or greater. You get an emblem with creatures you control have base power and toughness 9/9. So this creature can enter the battlefield. Potentially, you could cast it for 0 mana. You got a 7/7 on the battlefield, and then you could immediately activate its ability and 100% get an emblem that makes all your creatures base power and toughness 9/9 before your opponents can really interact with this, you know, kill it before in response or whatever. You're going to be able to get that emblem if you have enough historic cards in your graveyard. Like if you have 10 or more, and then also mana value 30 or greater in there, you could just get all that value immediately for 0 mana, which is a very high ceiling. The floor is that it's not very good if it's like a 10 mana 7/7 that doesn't really do anything. But I think you're going to be putting it in the right deck. A historic focused deck that probably focuses on self-mill. Like even a single Traumatize effect where you just mill half your library, put it in the graveyard. You're going to be able to cast this for free usually, and then just activate its ability, and then all your creatures are 9/9s. Is this good enough? I think it is. Just making all your creatures 9/9s is very good. Obviously, it's much better in a deck that can go wide. You know, if you have a bunch of 1/1s on the battlefield, turning them all into 9/9s, that's just a huge power boost. But even if you're not go wide, if you're just like a historic deck that just likes self-milling a lot, generally speaking, your creatures are not going to be 9/9s. They're going to be a lot smaller than that. So having an emblem just makes all your creatures game-ending threats is always going to be very good. The only downside, obviously, is that you do have to exile a huge chunk of your graveyard. And if you are a self-mill deck, chances are you're going to be using your historic cards in your graveyard for other things, like reanimation, for example. And exiling them means you can't really use them for anything else for the rest of the game. So that is a cost, but the upside is definitely worth it here. So I don't think this is a commander. It's colorless, so you're going to have a lot of difficulty trying to fill your graveyard quickly enough to cast this for free and, you know, activate its ability very consistently. But if this is in the 99 of a deck that is historic and has a self-mill focus, then it's going to be really powerful. So yeah, the Triad is very flashy, very cool. I think it's very good in the 99 of historic self-mill deck. Then we've got the Revelations of Ezio. This is a 3 mana black saga. It has 3 chapters. The first one, destroy target tapped creature an opponent controls. Chapter 2, whenever an assassin you control attacks this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then chapter 3, return target assassin creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This card is obviously fairly good in an assassin deck. My main complaint, and this is just a complaint with all sagas basically outside of like a saga deck or anything that can proliferate it, sagas are kind of slow. And this ability, usually when I investigate sagas outside of like a saga deck or anything that can like speed run through the chapters, I really want to make sure that the first chapter is very good. And in this case, I think the first chapter is kind of bad. And the reason why I focus on the first chapter is because sagas take a long time to complete, right? This one, you're going to get its full value over the course of 3 turns, and 3 turns, it feels like an eternity in a 4-player commander game. So you really want to make sure that the first turn is very impactful. And usually speaking, ETB, destroy creature, is very good. But in this case, it does have to be tapped, and that is a fairly large restriction. Usually there's going to be a big creature or a threatening creature that is like untapped, and you just won't be able to kill it with its first chapter. So the restriction is kind of a bummer. Chapter 2 is fine. It's not like a huge ability. And then Chapter 3 is the most powerful one, just being able to reanimate any creature card and putting a +1/+1 counter on it is quite nice. It's worthy of the full chapter effect. And I like it. It's just kind of slow. And it's slow, and the first chapter is just a little bit weak. Like, it's very assassin-y, you know? Royal Assassin, destroy target tapped creature. It's a callback to the OG. I love it, but it is kind of slow and kind of weak these days, I would say. Or a little bit too situational, in my opinion. Taken all together, it's quite nice. It's more of a filler card in an assassin deck, though, than like an all-star in an assassin deck. So the Revelations of Ezio, it's either a decent filler, like high decent filler, or like greater than 99. I think it's just decent filler. I think there's way better assassin cards in this set than this one, even though it's very flavorful. Okay, we're almost done with all the brand new cards. We're going to be skipping Towering Viewpoint. It's a really cool effect flavor-wise, but 2 mana, 0/4 creature with reach is not that exciting. And then paying 3 mana to give Swing Flying is just very inefficient, so we're just going to skip that. I don't think it's very good in Commander. Tranquilize also we're going to be skipping. 2 mana sorcery speed, stun something is just not very good. But we're going to move on to a card that I think is excellent, really, really strong. One of my favorites in the entire set. It's a Viewpoint Synchronization. It's a 5 mana green sorcery, but it has a free running cost of just 3 mana, 2 and a green. Search your library for up to 3 basic land cards and reveal them. Put 2 of them onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. So hard casted for 5 mana, not very good, right? Being able to ramp out 2 basic lands and put 1 into your hand, not really worth the 5 mana. But for 3 mana, this is basically an overpowered Cultivate. Instead of searching your library for 2 lands and putting 1 onto the battlefield and 1 to your hand, you're searching up 3 lands, putting 2 on the battlefield and 1 into your hand. And that's incredible value for 3 mana. So if you're in a deck that can activate the free running cost, like all these free running cards, it's very, very powerful. The one snag here is that most assassin decks are not accessing green. We saw a lot of Dimir assassins, we saw some Boros assassins. The only one that can really run this in an assassin deck is the Ezio deck that is 5 colors. So in that deck, it's quite good, but it also has the commander clause. So if you have any commander that's in green that is all about dealing damage to your opponents, specifically ones that come out on turn 1 and 2, so you can curve into this on turn 3, then it becomes really good. So that's a very narrow selection of commanders, obviously. You have to be, I think the ideal spot for Viewpoint Synchronization is going to be a commander that comes out on turn 1 and 2 and has evasion built in, or just wants to be aggressive, wants to be Voltron-y. One that comes to mind is my personal favorite Voltron deck. It's Skullbriar. I always mention Skullbriar, and this is yet another good Skullbriar card. Skullbriar comes out on turn 2, it has haste, and it grows every single time it deals combat damage to a player. So you play it on turn 2, you swing in, it grows a little bit, then turn 3, you swing in with it again, you hit somebody else, and then you cast this spell and you ramp out 2 lands directly onto the battlefield, 1 into your hand, and you're gaming for the rest of the game. You're having a really great time. So it's great in Skullbriar and any other commander that kind of fits the same feel as Skullbriar, 1 or 2 combat focused commanders. And then also, even though they're not really assassins, they are technically assassins, changelings. I'm actually going to be putting this in my changeling deck because all changelings are assassins. So my Dragon changeling deck, I have all basically the 1-drop and 2-drop changelings, and it's very combat focused. So I can very easily play a changeling on turn 1 or 2, swing in with it on turn 3, and then immediately ramp it out. That deck is like the only deck that doesn't run a lot of basics. I only run 1, and I am Mr. Basics, and that is a secret shame of mine. But this is the card that will actually get me to run 5 basics in that deck, 1 of each. And so I can actually run Viewpoint Synchronization very consistently. And I'm really excited because now finally I have an excuse to run more basics in that deck, and this card is just really powerful in it. So viewpoint synchronization, I love it. I love this card. It's going to my changing deck. My changing deck is my all-time favorite deck, so I'm going to put it in the top of Tomer personal pickups. Now the final new card from the set is What Must Be Done. This is a 5-mana white sorcery. It's a Moto spell. It says choose one. First, let the world burn, so destroy all artifacts and creatures, or release Juno. Return target historic permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it if it is a creature. So this is a flexible spell that has 2 very impactful abilities. One is a reanimate directly onto the battlefield, that, you know, will grow the creature if it's a creature. Or the other one is basically, a Cleansing Nova? I think there's like a sorcery that's played fairly often. I think it's Cleansing Nova, where it's all artifacts or creatures, or no, it's all artifacts or enchantments. Another one is destroy all creatures. And this one is kind of like that. It's destroy all artifacts and creatures, or reanimate. I think this card is probably a slam dunk in like an Enchantress style deck, where the first mode, if you don't run a lot of creatures, if you're like really focused on just non-creature enchantments, the first mode is going to be very tantalizing because you're going to be destroying things that your deck is not really focused on, artifacts and creatures. So you're going to always be happy with that mode if there are a lot of artifacts and creatures on the battlefield. But on the off chance that there's a really important enchantment in your graveyard or other historic permanent card in your graveyard, you can also choose release Juno. So the flexibility is quite nice there. I really like it the most in like that style of deck, non-creature artifacts, non-creature enchantments. So like a Saga deck, for example, this would be fantastic in. Outside of that, there might be other homes for it too, but I think it's very, very good there in particular, and that's the one that came off on the top of my head. If you have other homes for it, let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what's going on in the artwork. Why is there like a crazy lady behind this guy wearing like office wear or something? I don't know. The contrast here is very strange. Why is he reaching for a disco orb? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section. I've never played Assassin's Creed, so I have no idea what the context is. Just the artwork is very funny to me. It kind of reminds me of the meme, you know, where they're doing like the Thor Ragnarok meme, and the director's like showing what's her face, Helia, like the roll footage. It kind of reminds me of that, where it's like some guy dressed up in normal attire, and one person's like one white lady's like towering over him in this really badass outfit. Kind of reminds me of that, but yeah, let me know in the comment section. Okay, what must be done? Great in the 99. I think definitely in Enchantress, specifically like Saga style decks. But probably great in other decks too. Also, I lied. This wasn't the last card. There were 2 more cards that were previewed and are just not on Scryfall yet, so we're going to be checking them out real quick. So the first one is Alexios, Deimos of Cosmos. This is a 4-mana red 4/4 legendary creature, human berserker. It has trample. It attacks each combat if able, can't be sacrificed, and can't attack its owner. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios, untaps it, and puts a +1/+1 counter on it. It gains haste until end of turn. So this is basically a new slicer. It's a card that you play, and you just pass it around the table, and it's essentially goaded. Yeah, it is goaded. It just doesn't use the word goaded. I can't attack you, the owner. I must attack, and it can't be sacrificed. So no, like, just sacrificing it to your Alter Dementia or anything. So it just goes around the table, dealing a lot of damage to all of your opponents. Unlike Slicer, which had Double Strike, a very potent keyword, this one has Trample, so it has some light evasion, and it also grows every single turn. So you pass it to the first person, it's now a 5/5, and when you pass it around the table, basically every single turn cycle, if there's 4 people in the game, then that's +4/+4 every single turn cycle, which means it gets out of control very, very quickly. So yeah, Alexios does a ton of damage, and it's a very, very scary threat on the table for basically all your opponents. Slicer was very, very powerful. I don't know how Alexios compares to Slicer. I think Slicer's still probably better, but I'm not quite sure. Let me know in the comments section. which you think is going to be stronger. I think Double Strike is better than Trample, but this one grows very, very quickly with +1/+1 counter, so maybe it is actually just better. It does have the pseudo evasion, which is nice. Otherwise, it works pretty much the exact same. It's not an artifact, so it can't be like disenchanted or whatever. That is a nice little bonus, but I think it's going to be just doing the same thing as Slicer. And I do know that Slicer is CEDH playable. It is a very powerful effect. It's even more powerful in casual, where like there's just less answers to it, and games take longer to end. So Slicer or Alexios, for example, and Slicer both have longer to just kill people with combat damage. So that's just a scarier threat in casual too. Yeah, I personally love these effects. One of my very first commander decks of all time was Corona the False God. It's a deck that I just recently rebuilt, and I love it to death. And this was like the proto Slicer and everything. It's the same concept where you have to pass it around the table, but it doesn't have to attack. It's not goaded, so it can still attack you, and it can be sacrificed. So it's like a very terrible version of like Slicer and Alexios. But nonetheless, I love it. I rebuilt it as Enchantress, and I'm going to go through the various hoops to make it work as a pseudo Slicer effect. So I love this effect to death. These ones are much more powerful, much more scarier. So it might be a little bit too strong for a lot of play groups even. It might be like salt inducing at how effective it is at killing everybody. But nonetheless, I still like the effect, and I think it's very, very worthy of building around and also just being in the 99. And then the other card that I really like is Overpowering Attack, which is right beside it. It's a 5 mana red sorcery. It has free running of 3 mana, and it's an extra combat. Tap all creatures you control that attack this turn. If it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase, followed by an additional main phase. So this is like essentially Relentless Assault, just your plain vanilla extra combat spell at uncommon, which is very cool. And it can cost less mana. It could cost 3 mana instead of like the baseline, which is like 4. But if you have to hardcast it, it's 5 mana. Even if you hardcast it for 5 mana, I don't know. I'm a very big proponent of extra combat spells. I think they're incredibly powerful, and they're a great way to close out games. I know a lot of people value it a lot less than me, but I've always had a lot of fun with them. Not only just ending the game, but also it means an extra round of combat triggers. It's an extra round of attack triggers. So it's even good even outside of just like killing an opponent or whatever. But they're also very good at killing an opponent. And a 3 mana version of it in the right deck is very, very potent. I'm personally going to be testing it in my Changeling deck. But if you are also in a deck that, is focused on Voltron strategies, for example, if you're a red Voltron deck, you're smashing people in with your commander. This is not something that you necessarily need to be like curving out into. You don't have to have like a 1-drop or 2-drop commander, then play this on turn 3. No. This is like a late game finisher type card. This can fit in a lot of different like red focused Voltron decks where you're smashing in with your commander. Even if not a Voltron deck, if you're just like smashing in for commander and a bunch of other creatures very consistently and triggering the free running, a 3 mana extra combat is just going to be very good in a lot of different red decks. So I think it's very good. Also, we've seen a lot of Boros Assassin commanders. So if you're an Assassin deck in red, you can run it there too. I think it's just one of the better cards, one of the best cards in the set. I really like extra combats, and a 3 mana extra combat is really, really good. And even a 5 mana extra combat is not ideal. We have a lot better 5 mana extra combat spells, but if you can cast it 90% of the time as a 3 mana one and then 10% as a 5 mana one, I'm still happy with it. So Alexios, great in the command zone. I'm personally not going to put it in the command zone, but I'm probably going to put it in my Zedru deck, and it's going to be fun regardless. And then the Overpowering Assault, I think is going to be fantastic in the 99 of a whole bunch of decks. I'm really, really excited for this one. I have like an Inti deck, for example, that I'm going to put it in. So you know what? I'm just going to actually go into my personal pick, because I will be picking up a copy of this for my Inti deck, because it just fits so well there. And actually Alexios, I'm going to dabble it. I'm going to try it in my Zedru deck. All right, and these are all the brand new Assassin's Creed cards ranked and analyzed. I did skip some that I thought were just not worth talking about. They're a little bit too weak, but I covered basically all of them. Again, for the ranking scales, these are obviously my personal opinions. You feel free to disagree with me in the comment section below and tell me why certain cards are better or worse than how I initially graded them. Tomer personal pickups, these are just the cards that I'm going to be adding to my personal decks. That's at least testing them out. They're not going to stay there forever maybe, but I'm going to be trying them out at the very least. Grade in the command zone, these are the ones that I think are best suited as new commanders. Templar Knight is an honorary commander because obviously they're 99 cards, but they're essentially what you're going to be building your deck around. Grade in the 99, these are cards that I think are going to be fantastic in at least one deck, or multiple archetypes even. Then we have the Trada pile. These are the cards that I think are going to just make the most sense in a Trada and not like a generic assassin deck. And I'm just personally biased to a Trada, so I wanted to talk about a Trada a little bit. And then finally, decent filler. These are the cards that I think can show up in the 99 or in the command zone. But if you're looking for more optimized lists of those same decks, you're probably going to be swapping them out eventually. Overall thoughts on this set, I think it's deliberately a little bit lower power compared to some of the other sets we've had recently, especially compared to Modern Horizons 3, which just came out right before Assassin's Creed did. Modern Horizons 3 is like ridiculously overpowered compared to basically anything that came before it. And this one is definitely feels like basically like if Modern Horizons 3 is like the original Mirrodin block, this feels kind of like the Kamigawa block. It's kind of aimed at Assassin's Creed fans, and I think is intentionally lower power to kind of like curve things down for Modern Horizons 3 and kind of ease down expectations a little bit. So yeah, there's not too much here for the average commander player, but if you are in a specific archetype that Assassin's Creed cares about, which is historic assassins and, you know, the commander damage focused crowd as well, then you're going to be really happy with it. If you don't care about Assassin's Creed at all, you can safely just ignore this set. Like, there's nothing here that is so busted that you absolutely need to have. So if you don't like Assassin's Creed, you could just skip it. If you like Assassin's Creed, then you can collect the entire set and you're going to be super happy with it. And if you're historic assassin focused or commander damage focused, there's some stuff here for you. That's it for the video, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you do. And until next time, friends, see ya!